Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. The people of the Motherland are coming. Fortunately, I am Superman of Doomsday. Chapter 41. The elite soldiers of the underwater kingdom of Atlantis were killed instantly like fragile fish and shrimp, and the high-end technological armor was completely pierced and shattered. The sea was turbulent, and it was knocked out of a vacuum area that even seawater couldn't get close to. The 3-meter-high bone spurs violently threw the armored soldiers pierced by the bone spurs into the distance. What kind of monster is this? Even though such a tall and huge bone spur body is faster than the underwater people in the water, there is also this indescribable power of gods and demons, as well as the destructive aura surging and lingering on the surface of the exoskeleton. The quasi-queen of Atlantis, Atlana, felt chills all over her body. Even though she had resisted desperately before facing many soldiers, she followed her instinct and turned around without a trace of hesitation and fled. Escape. Encountering such an existence of force majeure, you can only run away. Hoo-hoo. The turbid and turbulent seawater was not cut apart, and the seawater flowed along the plump body of the white-haired young woman without resistance, turning Atlanta into a torrent. As a seaman who was born in the kingdom under the 10,000-meter seabed, and was also a royal blood passed down from the ancient times of Atlantis, Atlanta walked far faster in the water than ordinary sea people. Especially at this moment of life and death, Atlantis rushed to the remote sea like a jet water arrow, and its moving speed soared to Mach 8 in an instant. What is the concept of Mach 8? Travel faster than a plane. In the blink of an eye, Atlanta had already broken free from the chains, exploded and fled to the sea several kilometers away. She looked back and saw that the bone spur monster that rushed into the sea was still in place, and its huge body was about to be fully covered by the swirling sea water. Can do it. After all, she is a person from the bottom of the sea, and she can escape the opponent in the water. Atlanta's heart surged with joy for the rest of her life, but she suddenly saw the bony spur monster behind her making a slight back kick. Pedal, water, boom. The next moment, as if a ton of depth charges had been detonated in the seawater in a radius of 10 kilometers was surging. Atlanta, who was walking at a high speed in the water, had her mind blank, and saw the bony spur monster in the distance blurred and disappeared. From the seawater explosion to the sea area along the road where she was directly split into a vacuum path. Before Atlanta could react, a metal-hard, huge and terrifying exoskeleton palm protruded from the seawater behind him forcefully, and grabbed herself in the palm. No, no, no. The pretty face of the white-haired young woman paled in an instant, and she struggled desperately, but the bone spur monster's ferocious palm and 5 fingers were 10,000 times stronger than the chains just now, like huge iron clamps tightly around her waist. No matter how much she resisted, it was difficult to pry slightest. Even in Dahai's home court, the strength between the two is still not in the same order of magnitude. Boom. The seawater in the sea area where it was located was once again turbulent and erupted, setting off exaggerated huge waves, and the clouds above also smashed and shattered. Atlanta saw the landscape at a height of 1,000 meters, and then continued to fall towards the sea at the end of her vision. It's over, it's over, it's over. The queen-to-be Atlanta was in despair. Wouldn't this devil-like monster eat herself as food? God, she really doesn't taste good, it tastes like salted fish. In short, farewell, Thomas, little Arthur. Atlanta was trembling all over. Her bony spurs moved in an unreasonable and exaggerated way of moving, and disasters were everywhere in the places she passed, and the strong wind that was constantly washing her face made her unable to open her eyes. About half a minute, Atlanta didn't know how far the ocean had crossed. The sound of the fall made a rumbling sound, apparently coming from the sea to a place on land. The huge palms tightly restraining her waist were released, causing Atlanta to lie face down on the beach. She opened her eyes with stares in her eyes, and saw that she was on a deserted island, and the extremely terrifying and powerful bone spur just now had disappeared. But the deserted island is full of traces similar to meteor craters, which means that this is the site where bone spurs exist. Atlanta was still in shock, and suddenly heard a loud cry from the side. Here, there is actually a baby. Atlanta hurriedly got up from the ground, and sure enough, she saw a baby who was still in swaddling clothes, crying loudly in the narrow cabin of the unknown aircraft. I don't know if it's because I'm worried that the baby will attract the bone spur monster again, or because of the emotion of being a new mother in my heart. Atlanta stepped forward subconsciously, and held the baby in her arms from the cabin, but the crying did not stop, and a weak look appeared on her little face. Are you hungry? Atlanta hesitated, but still lifted a corner of the collar, revealing a touch of plump whiteness in the sun. Under the rustling sound, the baby stopped crying. On Atlanta's beautiful and soft face, the corners of her mouth could not help but curl up, as if she had forgotten the danger she was in. And many more. Atlanta looked around in shock at the deserted island, and suddenly realized something. Why didn't the bone spur monster kill him, and brought her alone to the place where there was a baby, and he happened to have food? How could there be such a coincidence? Boom. The sea surface and the clouds broke apart almost at the same time. The bone spur monster with a destructive aura leapt thousands of meters into the air, facing the sun with a hurricane on its body, and no one noticed that there was a ray of humanity on its gray and terrifying face. Cold, dazed, violent, struggling. Doomsday Yaimeng was thinking half out of control and half rationally. Since in the dream, even the will and thinking have begun to be assimilated by Doomsday, what about in reality? He is now in a semi-lost state in the dream world, unable to wake up through self-consciousness at all. America, in a small coastal town. Looking at the sky dyed blood red by flames and colorful clouds, an old fisherman in ordinary linen clothes stood on a simple wooden pier, and the sea breeze blew his white beard and temples. Should I take action? Now, I am the only one who can kill such a powerful monster, right? The old fisherman muttered to himself. Immediately, his cloudy eyes glowed with a holy light, and he chuckled, when did I become so timid? New God, who said that the era of the old gods has completely passed, it seems that we have been silent for too long, so that the world has forgotten us. Quote. At this moment, a powerful and extraordinary aura emanated from the aged body of the fisherman under his sackcloth, and even caused the sea in front of him to resonate with the vision of surging waves. The main reason is that the opponent is still at home in the sea where he is best at fighting. If he doesn't make a move, the old fisherman feels that he will lose face. What's more, he is naturally invincible in the sea and cannot be killed unless the opponent has an item like Tears of Grow. This was true 5,000 years ago, and it will be true 5,000 years later. Not far away is a small town building on a tall tower. Wonder Woman Diana suddenly turned her head, and looked in the direction of the town's pier in disbelief. How is it possible? This is the breath of a living god. However, this aura is completely different from the god of war. Another old deity that still survives to modern times. Town pier. The old fisherman waved his hand lightly, and a huge wave slammed onto the shore. The moment it touched his old body seemed to melt into the sea and disappear. The sea is hidden in the center of the earth. The deep underwater cemetery of the Emperor of Atlantis. For thousands of years, the silence here has been broken again. The undercurrent surged, and the seawater faintly emerged and condensed into the body of an old man. He stretched out his hand to the stone throne sitting in the depths of the cemetery, holding the golden trident weapon held by the skeleton of the Atlantean emperor. Who? A strange voice guarding the underwater cemetery suddenly sounded, and then screamed with excitement, "My lord, is it you? Borrow a weapon and use it." "No, this trident is mine in the first place." Taking off the golden trident, the old fisherman's beard, hair, and body were shining with a sacred and majestic silver-white light, like a young man in high spirits saying, "Fight with me." At this time, the real world. Tianhe City, within the supernatural department. Unbelievable. The young female detective stared at the silver-haired boy lying alone on the hospital bed in the highest-grade isolation room through the one-way glass window with wide brown eyes. It's been a long time. Not only did he show no signs of weakness, but his condition seems to be getting better and better, but his body is still steaming. Wait, did I read it wrong? The young female detective suddenly stared at the silver-haired boy's right arm, and under the light of the daylight, there was a strange glimmer of silver-plated light. It's an exoskeleton. A calm voice suddenly sounded behind him. Sir. The young female detective was taken aback. She looked back in horror, and saw that it was the middle-aged detective with a sullen face. Then she let out a sigh of relief. Exoskeleton. She came to her senses, and then looked at the sleeping silver-haired boy in the isolation room. Isn't there a thin layer of biological exoskeleton on the arm from the shoulder to the palm? Gray exoskeleton, instead of skin. The young female detective's scalp tingled. Is this still human? Now, it is basically certain that he was invaded by alien creatures like aliens. The middle-aged detective speculated that the aliens had similar exoskeletons after all, and he squinted his eyes. That is, it is different from other victims who were invaded by aliens. Others were fostered with alien embryos in their bodies, but he is like the individual as a whole tends to be alien to this creature. The young female detective asked nervously, "Sir, how is the situation at the school and the hospital?" Now, 90% of the supernatural department is working with other departments to deal with the unexpected incident that invaded the spaceship-crashed campus. In their branch, only the inmate, high school student Yaimong, is guarded, and there is also a logistics base station that can contact the scene and the headquarters at any time. Basically solved, the middle-aged detective said in a deep voice, thanks to the information provided by a high school student. At the school, a total of 6 adult aliens and more than 20 face-hugging bugs were eliminated and dealt with. The surrounding city has been completely sealed off. The hospital besides, all the rescued survivors were tested, and a total of 18 larvae were taken out from the survivors' bodies. Oh my God! The young female detective covered her mouth with her hands, feeling disgusted and frightened. The invasion and reproduction speed of this creature was even more terrifying than she had imagined. The middle-aged inspector said with deep eyes, "Over there at the headquarters, invading creatures like aliens have been designated as a C-level danger factor. Class C." The young female detective couldn't help shaking her body. She didn't expect to encounter such a high-level intrusion creation just a week after joining the job. C-level invading creations cannot be touched by a single person without armor or armament. It is the level of destroying villages. And this kind of alien as a C-level invasion creation is more than one. According to the invasion incident, it has reached B-level, the crisis of destroying the town. If it is not handled properly, at least tens of thousands of people will die. Certainly, what they didn't know was that the biochemical item that indirectly created the alien creature, the black water, had been completely destroyed by the power of the Doomsday released by Yaimong. Otherwise, it would not be C and B grades. By contrast, Yimeng, who has been rated as an E-level risk factor, is simply a shame for containment. Anyway, he has a secret that we can't understand. There was a glimmer of light in the eyes of the middle-aged detective, with a dignified face that was not angry, and he looked at the boy in the isolation room. Before, it should be the exoskeleton hidden on his body that prevented the X-ray scan and prevented us from getting know what's going on in his body. It is necessary to let the patron saint conduct a second test on him as soon as possible to confirm his true danger level, and then make further treatment, detain him on the spot, kill him, or transfer him. When the middle-aged detective said this, he asked in a deep voice, "Is it time for the patron saint to apply for an appointment?" "It should be here soon." The young female detective was talking when suddenly her consciousness froze. When an invisible presence descended, it seemed that even time was suspended, and the isolation room and outside of the supernatural department here suddenly fell into a subtle silence. "I have arrived." Immediately, a cold and neutral voice sounded out of nowhere in the minds of the middle-aged detective and the female detective. "Dragon girl." With a look of awe, the middle-aged detective pointed to the silver-haired boy who was still asleep in the isolation room. "He is the target of this test." The Doomsday incarnation in the dream, Yimeng, naturally cannot know the situation of reality itself. Returning to the island where the sun of Krypton is located, ruining Yimeng fell into the sea from the sky above 1,000 meters as usual, like a depth charge, causing a skyrocketing spray, but this time, the seawater poured back suddenly before he jumped up and emptied. At this moment, the seawater swallowed him like a huge mouth of an abyss. Yimeng, the incarnation of Doomsday, was taken aback for a moment, confused by the courage of the people behind him who dared to surround and kill him now, so that he couldn't react. The next moment, 3 points of cold light shot out like lightning from the turbulent sea water. It was a golden trident rippling with golden light and divine power. The tip of the halberd directly hit the undefended chest of the bone spur monster. Destroyer Yaimong, who was a bone spur monster, raised his crimson eyes, and saw a male figure dressed as an old fisherman emerging from the sea where the handle of the golden trident was located. Di, the sea god in ancient Greek mythology, one of the 12 main gods of Olympus, the old sea god Poseidon held a trident, and stabbed the bone spur monster hard in the chest. Just like, in the mythology, Sanction conquered countless strange epic pictures of the seabed. Accompanied by the sea god Poseidon holding the trident artifact again after thousands of years, and sending out a fatal stab, the power of the sea is on his body, and the endless seawater surges and pushes down the bone spur monster. Boom! In an instant, Poseidon, the god of the sea, pushed down the trident artifact with all his strength, and the seawater of the entire ocean also oscillated to suppress the bone spur monster, until it nailed the bone spur monster into the rock wall of the abyss under the sea. Boom! Ripples of golden light radiate outward, and waves sweep through layer upon layer. The huge pressure caused by the sea water alone has reached a gravity 10,000 times higher than that of the Earth, enough to crush a modern large submarine into a flat iron plate. And more seawater pressure and divine power are exerted on the trident artifact, which is enough to easily penetrate the body of the god. Poseidon, the god of the sea, strives to kill with one blow. The sea is turbulent, the sea is shaking. At this moment, the underwater kingdom of Atlantis, and other underwater kingdoms hidden in the deep sea, the inner civilization buildings are constantly shaking. Countless sea people trembled inexplicably, feeling that this was definitely not the power of land people. Crash! The aftermath alone formed a huge wave and rushed to the coast, smashing countless small towns and fishing villages. In the hinterland of the sea, on an isolated island, Atlanta was holding the Kryptonian baby, and was hesitating whether to flee into the sea, when she saw turmoil raging in the sea ahead like a washing drum. Atlanta was shocked, seeing the controlled flow of sea water as if the entire sea area, recalling a legend about the Atlantis Empire. To control the ocean, only the nation-building tool of Atlantis, the long-lost Poseidon Trident, can do this. The last user is the Atlantis Emperor who has passed away for thousands of years. Certainly, if she knew that it was Poseidon himself who was using this trident artifact, she would be even more shocked. Poseidon, the god of the sea, is a real god who has disappeared from the earth for thousands of years. As if by fate, the real world and the dream universe. At this moment, Yaimong collided with gods from different worlds at the same time. Atlanta, the quasi-queen of the kingdom of Atlantis, was holding the son of Krypton, standing on an island that was mostly submerged by the waves. Under her horrified gaze, the entire ocean roared to the sky as if it had come to life. This anger could destroy the Earth's submarine civilization and land civilization at the same time. The howling wind blew the dark clouds and once again covered the sun and the sky. The huge waves were surging, and giant vortices appeared one after another on the surface of the sea. And this is just the aftermath of the battle caused somewhere under the sea of 10,000 meters. Coastal town. A golden lasso of nothingness is like a flying dragon snake. It extends forward and breaks through the 10-meter wave that hits the pier along the coast. The rope brings back the girl who was almost swallowed by the huge wave. Yujie returns to the small town along the coast. On top of the tower building, the girl raised her head in shock, and saw a gentle and powerful woman, as heroic as a god. "Are you okay?" Wonder Woman Diana asked softly. The little girl subconsciously shook her head. "That's good." Wonder Woman Diana stood up again, looking at the vast sea outside the pier, which had changed from the previous tranquility to chaos. The sea wind is howling, and the waves are raging. Faintly visible ripples of golden divine power are mixed in the huge waves, which are transmitted from the depths of the sea in the hinterland of the sea to this place, shaking the sea water and the clouds in the sky. So strong. Wonder Woman Diana's beautiful eyes became more serious. Unexpectedly, apart from Ares, the god of war, there are still old gods on the earth who have survived to modern times, and they possess power far beyond her imagination. Even if she participates in a battle of this level, it won't affect the result. The victory or defeat is bound to be decided on one side. This moment, hold the trident artifact and stab the bone spur monster, and use the power of the sea to suppress the bone spur existence to the bottom of the 10,000-meter seabed. This smooth and all-powerful killing blow made Poseidon, the god of the sea, faintly regain the high-spirited feeling he had when he was young, and regained his high status as a god when he was revered by thousands of people in the Age of Gods. But Poseidon, the god of the sea, couldn't laugh. The trident artifact in his hand, which ruled the world, didn't penetrate the bone spur monster's body, but only penetrated an inch into the gray-white exoskeleton. Compared with the 3-meter-tall giant body, even the surface defense was weak, not broken. Didn't break the defense. What a joke. At this moment, Poseidon, the god of the sea, seriously suspected that he was old and weak, or that he hadn't fought for a long time. Otherwise, how could such a biological body exist in the world, which is harder than the metal used to make artifacts? Gurgling, the temperature rose suddenly, and the seawater in the 10,000-meter deep sea suddenly became boiling. Sea god Poseidon raised his eyes little by little, and saw a pair of crimson beast eyes surging with endless violence and destruction. The corners of the monster's grinning mouth seemed to be smiling. A cold air surged up the back of sea god Poseidon, and what made him even more horrified was still behind. Obviously under the pressure of the sea water in the entire sea area, the submarine can be pressed into paper, which is comparable to the blessing of tens of thousands of times the Earth's gravity. But the bone spur monster's movements didn't pause at all, it naturally grabbed and stabbed at the sea god's trident. At this moment, sea god Poseidon felt chills all over his body, and he realized something deeply. This is a monster, an out-and-out monster that is far beyond the common sense of the Earth world where it is located. Even if it appeared in the most powerful and radiant age of the gods, it was still enough to raise the Olympic mountains to the ground. It made Poseidon, the god of the sea, vaguely see that dark side, who invaded the Earth tens of thousands of years ago, is so powerful. Also this moment, sea god Poseidon suddenly regretted why he jumped out and tried to kill this bony spur monster of unknown origin. However, since he has already shot, at least complete this complete fatal blow. Drink. Before Yaimong could grab the trident, Poseidon, the god of the sea, let out a sudden yell, his hair and beard glowed with a mighty divine light, and he held the trident in his hands tightly with both hands, continuing to burst forward with divine power. Kaka. The trident artifact seemed to be inserted into the exoskeleton again, and the huge waves followed his consciousness to suppress it. Kill it. Sea god Poseidon continued to shout. Accompanied by his words, one after another huge black shadow tentacles shot out of the deep sea like lightning, and a dozen tentacles instantly suppressed the bone spur monster nailed by the trident and wrapped them around for several times until the bone spur monster and the trident were wrapped together into a gigantic shrinking ball of meat. Behind Poseidon, the sea god, a monstrously huge monstrous figure like a mountain was revealed. The tip of the iceberg of the visible body alone exceeded 100 meters, and the body was waving more than a dozen giant tentacles with a length of 100 meters. It can fully satisfy the giant phobia of human beings since ancient times. Kerasin, the legendary ancient sea beast actually exists. Holding the curious Kryptonian baby with open eyes, Atlanta looked at the huge beast shadow emerging from the depths of the sea through the sea water, becoming more and more terrified. Legend has it that Kerasin is the ancient master of the Earth's seas, with a body as high as 2,000 meters, and has the terrifying power to destroy underwater civilizations. Someone holds the sea god trident, controls the ancient sea beast Kerasin, and fights against that bone spur monster. It can't be the god in the legend. A horrifying thought flashed through Queen Atlana's mind. In her arms, the baby from Krypton clenched her fists and waved them lightly. Certainly, theoretically, in this DC universe, no one wants to win the killing monster who only understands destruction and has no emotions. Even now, with the rest of the strength caused by the sea god Poseidon's shot, the casualties caused by the tsunami are much greater than the disaster caused by the destruction of the Yaimong. Even though, the sea beast Kerasin, as an ancient sea beast, has killed and devoured countless human ships going to sea since ancient times. 10,000 meters deep sea. The sea god Poseidon and the sea beast Kerasin exerted their strength at the same time. It can be seen that the trident artifact is constantly piercing in, and the meatballs entwined by the tentacles are also constantly tightening and shrinking. Die, die, die. Your existence is a mistake, the disaster of this world, it is best to be destroyed. The sea god Poseidon's eyes burst into white light, full of murderous intent. Can win. If this continues, we can win. Even if you can't break through the defense, trapping this monster in the deep sea will still kill the opponent. But at this moment, he seemed to hear a sigh. Who is sighing? Sea god Poseidon was taken aback. Master, run away. Suddenly, the sea beast Kerasin behind him let out a painful wailing sound. What? Poseidon, the sea god, only felt a terrifying force coming from the trident, which nearly shattered his palm. Zizi. Wisps of golden red energy lightning erupted from the meatball, and the ball lightning spread the trident inch by inch, while more than a dozen tentacles were annihilated into ashes in an instant. The unscathed bony spur monster opened its mouth and roared. The sea water surged, turned into a bolt of lightning and crashed into the deep sea behind. The sea beast howled. "Do not." The sea god Poseidon's eyes were about to burst, and he looked back and saw that destroyer Riemann tore open the hard and thick triangular forehead of the giant sea beast with his bare hands, and then 3 red lasers of destruction energy shot forward, splitting the body of the kilometer-long giant sea beast into several pieces. The 2,000-meter-tall ancient sea beast Karasen was directly split and killed by 3 crimson destruction rays. The bone spur monster roared upwards, and lightning energy erupted from its body surface, sweeping and erupting from it as the center, forming the previous ball lightning. Only, this time the ball lightning is fundamentally different from the previous ones except that it is more powerful and has a wider range. ZZ. The ball lightning is also attached with a fine spore-like substance, and the moment it sweeps out, the body of the giant sea beast is destroyed into nothingness by large pieces. The body of the annihilated sea beast turned into a strong and invisible breath of life and rushed back into the bone spur monster's body, causing the slight gap on its chest exoskeleton to heal immediately and return to its peak state. What is that? The sea god Poseidon was terrified all over, and he couldn't even care about the death of the sea beast Karasen. He felt that from the terrifying energy lightning, there is another deeper substance. If the mysterious substance originating from the bone spur monster was classified as a virus, it would be the most terrifying virus. If the mysterious substance is divided into energy, it is the most strange and powerful doomsday energy. This substance is more terrifying than the tears of perishing, and it makes him tremble and fear from the depths of the Protoss genes. There is no doubt that this substance will definitely kill him. Slay gods with endless lifespans. Not even caring about the trident weapon, most of Poseidon's body turned into seawater, fleeing at a very fast speed. But the bone spur monster seemed to have locked onto him. 2 red laser rays instantly split the seawater, approaching with the mysterious spore substance. "No, don't, please." At this moment, Poseidon, the god of the sea, felt that he could not escape. He opened his mouth to beg for mercy, but realized that the other party was just an irrational monster. His brain has already instinctively presented a picture of himself and the seawater being torn apart by the crimson hot gaze, corroded and devoured by the mysterious spores. The divine body and divine power are all annihilated and passed away, and turned into a picture of the opponent's life nutrient. At this moment, the old sea god Poseidon really regretted it. Why mess with it? Laugh. The red light streaked across the deep sea, and at the last moment of his life, Poseidon, the god of the sea, suddenly froze again. But it is. The moment before the crimson hot gaze was about to approach him, he paused abruptly, and then drastically changed the direction of the shot to strike upwards. The deep sea, the shallow sea, the sea surface, and the dark clouds in the sky were pierced by the crimson energy beams one after another. Bunches of golden afterglow of the sun fell and sprinkled on the surface of a chaotic sea. The bone spur monster held the trident weapon in its hand, as if holding a 3-pronged ruler. The violent red light in its eyes faded a lot, and it stood motionless in the sea, with a terrifying and ferocious face that was indifferent. The distant sea. Poseidon, the sea god who survived the catastrophe, continued to flee for his life with a pale face. His pants were not sure whether it was seawater or something wet. He turned his head and stared in disbelief at the monster who was more like a god than him. "Why did you stop just now? It's like saving a hand after hearing your own begging for mercy. Didn't this monster follow its instinct to destroy and hunt everything?" Sea god Poseidon suddenly recalled the sigh he heard during the battle just now. Could it be that this bony spur monster, like the incarnation of destruction, is powerful enough to easily kill gods with? Poseidon, the god of the sea, didn't dare to think too much, and disappeared into the sea at a speed faster than the people in the sea. Knowing that there was no hope of escape, Atlanta returned from the sea to the deserted island, trembling with the innocent and smiling baby in her arms. Atlanta could hardly believe her eyes. As the owner of the ancient sea, the giant sea beast Karasen was instantly torn apart and shot dead with his bare hands. It is guessed that the supreme being of the sea god fled without even needing a weapon. That bone spur exists, so powerful that Atlanta, the quasi-queen of Atlantis, has no thought of resisting or escaping. No one, no god can stand against it. Boom. The silent sea suddenly broke open, and the 3-meter-high bony spur leapt high with spray, and then fell to the land of the deserted island, throwing the golden trident with dim light on the ground. It is really a lost sacred object of the Atlantis Empire, an artifact that can dominate and control the 7 countries under the sea if you master it. Atlanta felt that all the existences that could be relied on were not enough in the face of the current bony spurs. Facing the bony spur monster with surging violent red eyes, Atlanta's plump thighs were a little weak, and only the baby in her arms still smiled innocently, unaware that the existence that could destroy the world was right in front of her. However, Atlanta was suddenly stunned again. But the bone spur monster withdrew its gaze from itself and the baby, looked sideways, and looked at the sun descending towards the sea in a strange way. Looking and watching, the destructive crimson glow in its eyes continued to dim, its even breathing formed a hurricane, and the destructive lightning retracted, its face showing a ray of bewilderment and satisfaction. Really, take the initiative to bear part of the desire for destruction, and use this to vent out the destruction of things, which will help me control the will to destroy and then control this incarnation of Doomsday. Ruining Ri Meng thought to herself with a rational mind. Unfortunately, this is only an emergency measure. After all, once you suffer the desire to destroy, you must destroy things. Failure to satisfy the will to destroy will also lead to continued loss of control. And the will to destroy can only be satisfied for a while like this at most, but the will to destroy on Doomsday can accumulate and grow anytime and anywhere. It is destined to be an extremely long process to perfectly invade the DC Dreamland here and completely control this ancient incarnation of Doomsday. Yi Meng felt helpless, but there was nothing she could do for a while. I only hope that there are enough extraordinary beings in this world who can continue to withstand his will to vent and destroy. This is also the reason for the life of Poseidon, the sea god of Yiminliu. The old god is a rare species that can barely withstand the attack of the Doomsday. If you kill it now, where can you find it? DC Universe. Ruin Ri Yimeng remembered that there were many existences in this dream world that were not weaker than Kryptonian Superman, Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern Corps, Darkseid, Protoss Old and New. I hope that you can satisfy my desire for destruction in the future, before I control the dream, the incarnation of Doomsday, and become the Doomsday Superman. There was a fiery red glow in Yimeng's eyes. But at this moment, Ruining Ri Yimeng was shocked, and faintly, saw a gorgeous and dazzling female figure descending. The woman's tall and slender figure is graceful and exquisite, her snow-white skin seems to be flowing with holy light, her eyes are covered by a white silk scarf, and she is wearing a clean and holy white robe. Except for the exposed eyes, her facial features are exquisite and exquisite. Her long wine-red hair covers her beautiful back and round buttocks lightly, curling down to her bare white feet. She is as holy as an angel and as hot as a succubus. What can't be ignored is that behind the opponent, there are actually 2 wings of nothingness that are constantly burning like golden flames. Yi Meng suddenly realized, the other party does not exist in the current DC Universe dream, and has not really entered the DC dream where it is. Instead, from the real world, following his sleeping body, he entered his subconscious area. DC Universe Dreamland. The battle of the gods has just ended with the death of sea beasts and the defeat of Poseidon, the sea god, who abandoned his halberd. The tide recedes, the eddy falls slowly. The heat light dimmed, the hurricane died down. The sea surrounding the deserted island gradually calmed down. It was dusk, and everything around was blurred under the sunset. On a deserted island, Yimeng the Destroyer in the shape of a terrifying bone spur monster suddenly raised his head, and everything around him, the island, the waves, the sound of the wind, and even Atlanta and the sons of Krypton not far away stopped. The entire huge and real DC dream world stops at this moment. Even the avatar of Doomsday also stopped motionless in place, only the red light in his eyes still leapt like flowing flames and lightning. Yi Meng's consciousness at the junction of dreams clearly sensed that a perfect woman with golden flame wings was coming, entering his subconscious area from the body of the real world. How did you do that? By the way, Yi Meng didn't understand. This perfect woman does not really exist, this is also her consciousness, but it is extremely powerful, so it can break into the deep consciousness of his brain. Because she was blindfolded, the woman couldn't tell her age, but her appearance was exquisite, her figure was tall and slender, her skin was radiant, and she was beautiful in every way. especially those slender and beautiful legs with a high proportion, which set off the plump curves tightly wrapped in the white robe to the extreme. With the slight tremor of the golden flame wings behind him, holy and pure spiritual beams were released. Gorgeous and amazing. Yaimeng's consciousness was in a trance for a while. The personality consciousness distorted by the invasion of Doomsday was being purified to some extent, and the desire for destruction that filled his heart was gradually dissolving and disintegrating. Not only the desire to destroy, but also other desires are also purified one by one, as if even looking at each other more as a kind of blasphemy. Under that extremely beautiful and pure figure and radiance, Yaimeng's consciousness seemed to have entered the sage mode of wanting nothing, only wanting to present all secrets and memories to the other party. Yaimeng consciousness suddenly realized, she is Dragon Lady. In the real world, the extraordinary patron saint of the Eastern jurisdiction. The existence that cannot be seen clearly in reality, and can only be glimpsed in consciousness, the person with telepathic ability. It turns out, Dragon Girl is just a name, the incarnation of the other party's telepathy, but more like an extremely gorgeous and cool human-shaped phoenix. Yi Meng's thinking became more and more slow and stagnant, and the willpower blessed by some characteristics of artificial intelligence was severely suppressed the moment the opponent arrived. Telepathy, phoenix wings. A flash of enlightenment flashed through Yi Meng's mind. He remembers having a similar ability in Marvel, the X-Men series of movies and TV. That name is Phoenix Force, which is the most powerful ability setting in the X-Men series, not one of them. It is the manifestation of life and spiritual power in the universe, symbolizing life and emotion, and can dominate the spirit and all things to burn out the sin of desire. In Marvel, the Phoenix Force has had many host carriers, the most famous of which is the Phoenix Girl Chin Gray. If it's this kind of power, Yi Meng feels that she won't lose. His deep consciousness is being pried a little by the flaming golden wings of the phoenix, and his inner consciousness is about to break away from the dream of the DC universe, revealing the secret irresistibly. If you can catch it, it's all for you. Yi Meng was not angry, but felt extremely relaxed and relieved at this moment, and no longer used her own will to desperately suppress the desire to destroy the incarnation of Doomsday. He didn't resist, and handed everything over happily. Invasion files. High school student Iman. Intrusion number. SAS 1666. Number of casualties and property damage caused, unknown. Invasion level. Temporarily judged as E level may cause the death of many federal citizens, and one person cannot conduct field contact without armor and weapons. Regarding intrusion reports. Dakan Autonomous Prefecture, a resident of Tianhe City. In the year 197 of Xinglong's year, he once tortured and killed an adult mutton dog with his bare hands in the school. In the 200th year of the Star Dragon era, the only survivor within the range of the mysterious ball lightning in the alien invasion event. During containment, the body temperature rose above 50 degrees Celsius, and extraordinary features such as a hard white exoskeleton appeared on the body surface, and it was suspected to be invaded by special alien creatures. To be tested further. With a thought, Long Nu recalled in detail the detailed report on the silver-haired boy in the isolation room. She obviously remembered that she checked it out last week, and she didn't read out any intrusion anomalies telepathically. The other party is indeed just an ordinary high school student. Well, it may not be too ordinary to be valued by Tifa, the charming girl of dream age. Unexpectedly, the other party was involved in the alien incident that happened in Tianhe City, the invasion incident that had just been classified as a B-level risk factor, and was suspected of being invaded by a special alien creature. Poor guy. The Dragon Girl's thoughts were flowing, and the intrusion incidents in the Eastern jurisdiction had increased sharply recently, and she also started the detection process without delay. Behind him, the wings that seemed to be formed by burning golden flames in nothingness flapped gently, and the telepathic incarnation of the Dragon Girl ignored the wall and directly entered the mind of the young man lying on the hospital bed in the highest level isolation room. How so? As soon as she entered, the spiritual incarnation of the Dragon Girl was stunned. Under her spiritual perception, she couldn't find the boy's specific consciousness. How can that be? You must know that even a medically identified vegetative person still has a weak consciousness remaining deep in the brain. After all, once a person has no conscious mind, isn't it equivalent to real death? But the young man's body is still intact and alive, but his consciousness doesn't know where to flow, like a living body. Is he alive or dead now, or is his body controlled by an alien invasion? The dragon girl's telepathic incarnation turned into a soliloquy with lightly parted lips, and her brows suddenly frowned. In the depths of the boy's lost mind, there are various negative desires and wills, 99% of which are inhuman destruction. This guy is a murderer. No, this kind of will to destroy is no longer possessed by normal human beings. Sure enough, he was corrupted by the invasion, and it was severely invaded. The self-consciousness of thinking has long since ceased to exist, leaving only a walking corpse-like body. Sad victim. The guardian dragon girl has already given a preliminary judgment, and the telepathic incarnation subconsciously fluttered her wings, and blazing flames raged outward, igniting the remaining desire for destruction. Rest in peace. It's just that the pure desire to destroy is far more difficult to erase than any negative emotions. The dragon girl felt that her self-consciousness was a little tired, and the flames on the wings of the incarnate phoenix were dimmed, and only then did she completely disintegrate the desire for destruction. Should be able to obtain some memory fragments left in his mind, and then go out to report and incinerate this invaded boy's body. The dragon girl telepathic avatar was thinking of this, but the next moment, her avatar's fair and delicate face froze. It can be seen that the desire to destroy, which was just wiped out by the power of the phoenix, has resurfaced. If we say that the destructive will that was considered inhuman just now is just a small stream. Now, the terrifying desire to destroy is like a vast and boundless deep sea. The will to destroy, like a black tide, swept towards her telepathic avatar overwhelmingly. The dragon girl's mind was shaken, and she had never encountered such a mind-reading situation. The telepathic incarnation subconsciously stretched out the phoenix's power to resist. ZZ. Large areas of will to destroy were incinerated and eliminated, but these desires to destroy are endless. And constantly using the power of the phoenix to make the dragon girl telepathically incarnate, her delicate face was slightly pale, and her mental state continued to decline. A terrible sense of crisis filled Longnu's heart. It was the first time for her to encounter such a terrible out-of-control negative will, like a mental virus. If you stay in the depths of the other party's heart, even yourself will be swallowed by this will to destroy. In the depths of the soul named Yi Meng, there seems to be a terrible abyss hidden, from which the endless will to destroy surges out. The dragon girl's face turned pale, and the telepathic avatar desperately flapped the wings of the phoenix force, trying to escape. Unfortunately, if she chooses to escape immediately, she still has a chance. But her original plan was to fight against the endless will to destroy, which also caused her to miss the opportunity to leave. Present. The mental state of the dragon girl's telepathic avatar is constantly declining, while releasing the raging will to destroy more and more. ZZ. The destructive will of the dark tide constantly washed over the wings of the phoenix power, like moths to a flame, but it began to make one of the wings, which was formed like a golden flame, dull until it lost its light. The telepathic incarnation of the dragon girl suddenly lost her mental balance, and fell towards the depths of her heart that gushed out endless desires for destruction, and the remaining phoenix wing also began to dim and disappear. It's over. The dragon girl feels that she can't escape. The telepathic avatar will be swallowed by the abyss of will to destroy, and her own body in reality will die at the same time. Until this moment, the dragon girl couldn't believe it, that she, who possessed the power of the phoenix, would be planted deep in the heart of an ordinary person. Just before the telepathic incarnation of the dragon girl was about to be swallowed by the desire for destruction, a hand suddenly stretched out from the abyss of the soul where the will to destroy was surging, and grabbed the slender wrist of the dragon girl's telepathic avatar, and dragged her up little by little. You are. The dragon girl was stunned. It was a boy of about 19 years old. It is exactly the same as the silver-haired boy lying on the single hospital bed isolated in reality. However, the boy's eyes were filled with a robot-like cold silver light. Dragon girl suddenly realized, he is the master of the body on the hospital bed outside, the master of the spiritual region here, Yi Meng's self-awareness. How can that be? How did he withstand the engulfing and corrosion of this endless will to destroy? Even the power of the phoenix can't bear it. Dragon girl naturally doesn't know. Yimeng is the day of destruction, and the day of destruction is Yimeng. The two assimilate and invade each other, and the will to destroy is also shared. She's mine, get the hell out of here. Yimeng's self-awareness incarnation let out a low growl, and wrapped her other hand around Longnu's waist, which she could barely hold, and the next moment, the endless will to destroy all around receded like a tide. The dragon girl took a deep breath, and then the avatar of telepathy flushed again, and the avatars of the two minds and wills were in close contact with each other almost zero distance away. Different from the physical contact in reality, there is a sense of physical satisfaction, and the contact of the incarnation of the will of the soul is more like the communication of mutual desires. In particular, the overdrawn power of the phoenix just now made her current spiritual incarnation very weak, unable to use the power of the phoenix to purify herself and others of various negative emotions. Driven by some kind of self-desire, the skin of Dragon Girl's telepathic avatar glowed pink, and her slender and tight legs wrapped around the boy's waist almost instinctively. Open. It was obvious that she was entangled in it, but Longnu struggled to open her mouth. Her rosy mouth was slightly opened, spitting out steaming sweet and soft. Then, her words were blocked. The young man's right eye flickered with an uncontrollable and violent red light, and lightning storms were released from his body surface, tearing open the white robe made of spirit, revealing a telepathic body covered with red hair. That is holy, pure, flawless and inviolable, the noble phoenix dragon. Therefore, Yimeng followed her own essential desires and leaned over. Real world, paranormal department, outside the isolation room. The middle-aged detective and the young female detective were waiting outside, but as the time passed, the doubts on their faces became more and more obvious. The young female detective couldn't help but ask, this time, the testing time for the guardian goddess dragon girl, is it too long? The middle-aged detective didn't respond, his brows were furrowed. Indeed, it usually takes 5 seconds on average for the guardian goddess dragon maiden to detect the recipients after she descends. But now, 5 minutes have passed, and the dragon girl has not yet given the test conclusion. However, under the watchful eyes of the two, the expression of the silver-haired boy on the hospital bed, which was originally painful and tense, gradually relaxed, and a ray of relaxation and joy could be seen on the young and handsome face. The middle-aged detective pondered. Perhaps, the invasion problem has been resolved, and maybe Dragon Girl has left long ago. At the same time, Eastern Jurisdiction, Tianlong Autonomous Prefecture. Dragon Ball City, on Kunlun Mountain. A grand base building soaring into the clouds sits atop a hill. At this time, a group of professional white-collar women dressed in entourage uniforms and intellectually beautiful dresses, or politicians in suits and leather shoes with high authority, or military officers wearing insignia military uniforms with a sharp aura, were tensely surrounding a cross-legged young woman sitting on a crystal floor. The long red hair bloomed on the crystal floor like a rose. Under their startled gaze, the body of the red-haired woman, together with the white robe she was wearing, was transforming into a diamond texture at an extremely fast speed, like a handicraft. How so? This is the self-defense state of the dragon girl, which means that she has encountered a very dangerous thing. It's her telepathic awareness. It's never happened, check it out. The scene was in a panic, and no one could maintain enough composure. Everyone knew very well that once something happened to the patron saint of the Eastern Jurisdiction, it would be a big deal. Also, this world is about to completely usher in the signs of the era of collapse. Yimeng only felt that she had an indescribable dream. A very nice dream. This sweet dream made him vent most of the will to destroy due to the incarnation of Doomsday, lightly. It's time to wake up. Thinking of this, Yimeng felt an ambiguity between dream and reality, and he felt that he would open his eyes in reality in the next second. The next moment, Yimeng opened her eyes, her body straightened up and sat up naturally, her feet also got off the hospital bed and stood up smoothly and naturally. What caught my eye was the familiar daylight ceiling and the spacious and empty isolated single room that was no different from last week. There was also a pungent smell of disinfectant in the air. The corners of Yimeng's eyes twitched slightly. Was he quarantined as an intruder again? No, not being taken as, I was indeed invaded, assimilated by the invasion and assimilation of the Doomsday incarnation of my dream. Yimeng looked down and saw that the right arm was obviously covered with a layer of gray and white exoskeleton that resembled Doomsday. The muscle surface at the shoulder was connected to the phalanx on the back of the right hand, like an arm glove. Not only that, Yimeng tried to shake the 5 fingers of her right hand, and she could feel the power far beyond her own contained in it, as well as the urge to blow the wall of the isolation room. A tyrannical and out-of-control crimson flashed in the bottom of his right eye, and a silver glow of absolute reason appeared in the depths of his left eye. No, Yi Meng gritted her teeth, and tightly held the right wrist covered with the exoskeleton with her left hand, but saw that a thin layer of bone-white texture began to appear on the back of her left hand. Yi Meng's pupils suddenly shrank. Even if you wake up from a dream. At this moment when consciousness returns to the real world, the incarnation of Doomsday in DC's dream is still invading and assimilating his body, whether it destroys will or power. Yi Meng reckons that if this continues, even if he doesn't continue to dream, the reality itself will completely become an out-of-control destruction day in less than a week. The moment he touched Doomsday, there was no turning back. Yi Meng clenched her fists tightly, either becoming a Doomsday monster or a Doomsday Superman. There was only one way. Either be a Doomsday monster or a Doomsday Superman. This is really, there is no turning back. Yi Meng sighed secretly. He realized that the mobile phone on his body had been taken away, and his thoughts flowed outwards. Through the wall of the isolation room, he could see the situation outside. No one was there. 2. Now the real time is 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe there are only people guarding the main monitoring room. Fortunately, as soon as Yi Meng woke up, she overrode and controlled the built-in camera in the isolated room with her thoughts, and could tamper with the monitoring screen at any time. Yi Meng's eyes flickered. He must know what happened in the real world during the time he fell into a coma. And the attitudes and opinions of the Star Dragon Federation and the Supernatural Department towards themselves. This will also directly determine what Yi Meng will do next. Think here. A wisp of conscious thinking under Yi Meng's artificial intelligence characteristics, like virtual red static electricity, bursts out from between the eyebrows, sinks into the isolation room through the wall, and stays on a computer that records data operations. This is the artificial intelligence feature he obtained before, which can analyze and maintain technological electronic products within a range of 10 meters, borrow some of their functions and improve information. Yi Meng's thoughts flowed, and the moment she connected to the internal computer of the Supernatural Department, she quickly found the most important intrusion file here. The intrusion file currently listed first in the branch database is Invasion Files, Alien Spaceship, Intrusion Category, Non-Fixed Object, Intrusion Number, SAS 1700. Casualties have been caused, 609 dead and 1055 wounded. Invasion Level, judged as B level, the crisis of destroying the town. Regarding intrusion reports, it happened in the 200th year of the Xinglong year, on the day of the Federal College entrance examination, and fell into the campus of the No. 2 Middle School of Tianhe City. The spaceship crashed out of control, causing the first casualties at the scene. Then, a large number of aliens identified as C-level invasive organisms and face-hugging insects identified as D-level invasive organisms entered the campus inside the spacecraft, causing the second batch of casualties on the scene. The alien spawned by the facehugger parasitizing the survivors, causing the third batch of casualties. The invasion incident has been initially brought under control. Yi Meng nodded secretly. The efficiency of the Star Dragon Federation in handling the invasion was good, and the alien invasion was brought under control that day. Certainly, if he hadn't destroyed the biochemical weapon Blackwater and the large alien lair in advance, and revealed the information about the alien and the facehugger through Panhu, the Star Dragon Federation would not be able to deal with the follow-up of the alien incident in time. Yi Meng felt that the real world was destroyed directly, and there was no need to continue to struggle and resist. After all, alien invasion is not difficult to deal with. As long as this creature is not given time and opportunity to evolve through reproduction, a well-armed elite army is enough to sweep away. B-level invasion of creation event, C-level invasion of creatures. Yi Meng murmured. It is only now that he is online to understand that the Supernatural Department of the Star Dragon Federation has the rules for dividing the risk factor of previous film and television intrusion creations. It may cause injuries to federal citizens, which is the lowest level of G-level risk factor. And once it may lead to the death of a federal citizen, it will be raised to an F-level risk factor. Through the harm to federal citizens, and so on, the risk factor level can be deduced. It may cause many casualties among federal citizens, and if it is less than 100, it is classified as E-level. may cause a large number of federal citizens to die, less than 1,000 people, D level. The crisis of destroying villages may cause at least 10,000 deaths, grade C. The crisis of destroying the town may cause at least 100,000 deaths, grade B. The crisis of destroying the city may cause at least 1 million deaths, grade A. The crisis of extermination of the state may cause at least tens of millions of deaths, S level. The extinction crisis may cause at least 100 million deaths, SSS level. Global crisis, which may lead to the death of all human beings, the upper limit is 5 billion, X level danger. According to this division rule, Yi Meng still agrees with the determination of the alien as a C-level risk factor. After the death of the alien queen, each alien has the potential to become the alien queen, and the development of the lair in this way is enough to endanger the destruction of the citizens of a village. Only, in his opinion, it is wrong to judge the alien spaceship as AB class. On the alien spaceship, the most terrifying thing is not the alien, nor the alien queen, but the biochemical virus black water. Therefore, the alien spacecraft should actually be classified as X level, which is a global crisis that may lead to the death of all human beings. Yi Meng quickly turned to his intrusion file. Well, for the time being, it is judged as E-level risk factor. Class E, less dangerous than an adult alien and facehugger. This made Yi Meng, who was in the assimilation state of Doomsday, feel unconfident. Just look down on who. It would be great if I really had an E-level risk factor. Yi Meng laughed dumbfounded, but she also knew that the federal and supernatural departments did not understand her current situation. Otherwise, at least it is an SSS level, a crisis of extinction. Now that Yi Meng lost control, even she was afraid of it. In addition to the recent alien incident and his own intrusion files, Yi Meng also found some intrusion file information that triggered his past life memories in the computer database of this branch. E.g. Invasion Archives. Cruise ships must die. Invasion category. Non-fixed site. Intrusion number. SAS 101. Casualties caused. Unknown, over 1,000. Intrusion level. Identified as B level. Regarding intrusion reports. The cruise ship randomly appeared on the ocean in Star Dragon Federation 190. The cruise ship cannot be destroyed. Once the cruise ship is destroyed, the cruise ship will continue to appear somewhere in the sea. The Army has repeatedly used missile bombing tests. No one has left the cruise ship so far. Entering the cruise ship will die. The intrusion was not resolved. Invasion Archives. The Shark. Invasion type. Entity. Intrusion number. SAS 405. Casualties caused. 609. Intrusion level. Identified as C level. Regarding intrusion reports. In the 195th year of the Xinglong year, it first appeared in the eastern polar sea. It was 52 times larger than ordinary sharks. It sank several fishing boats and passenger ships, and was killed by submarines. This intrusion has been resolved. Invasion Archives. The House of Grudges. Invasion type. Fixed site. Intrusion number. SAS 1600. Casualties have been caused. 5 people are insane. Invasion level. Identified as D level. Intrusion report. In the 200th year of the Xinglong year, a family of 5 moved into a second-hand suburban wooden house, and a series of strange things happened. It was suspected that there were vengeful spirits that violated other people's spirits and possessed them. The intrusion was not resolved. This. Yi Meng's brain froze for a moment. Horror cruises, megalodons, and the conjuring. This is too bad. Yi Meng is very clear that some of the intruding creations and existences are extremely unscientific in setting. For example, the horror cruise ship, in the setting from the film and television, is the samsara revenge of the god of death on the untrustworthy human beings. If this is the case, then when the cruise ship appeared in the real world, did the god of death behind the scenes also invade it? In addition, Yi Meng also discovered that 10 years ago, there were only less than 100 file intrusion incidents. And 10 years later, the intrusion file number has already been ranked after 1016. This also means that more and more creations and existences that Yi Meng knew only existed in film and television works in her previous life are invading the real world more frequently and on a large scale. Think carefully. Fortunately, I am Doomsday. Yi Meng let out a long breath, not knowing whether to laugh or keep silent. In the worst case, it would be a big deal to turn into Doomsday and smash it together. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Yi Meng recalled the advertisements she saw before, and couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth. Whether it is the best time, he does not know. But on this point in the worst of times, he doesn't dispute. It only exists in the settings of horror, science fiction, fantasy and other film and television works in previous lives, and creations such as weird, huge, high-dimensional, extraordinary, etc. continue to come to reality. However, the vast majority of federal citizens are still unaware of these potential invasion threats. Sooner or later, the appearance of world peace will be completely torn apart. That day, in Yimeng's view, might even happen tomorrow. After reading many intrusion files, Yi Meng quickly adjusted her mood. There are two things that make him care. First, there is currently no intrusion file judged to be A-level or above in the database. Is it because the supernatural branch's database doesn't have enough authority, or is there really no A-level or above intrusion? Yi dreamed of the people from the Motherland, and if the opponents were classified according to the invasion level, they could at least be classified as S or SSS level. Second, seeing the obvious Doomsday exoskeleton on her body, Yi Meng knew that she must be designated as an invading existence. However, many of his intrusion files are still temporary and pending. So, why hasn't the Supernatural Department, and the Star Dragon Federation behind it, decided on a plan to deal with him? There is only one possibility, Yi Meng said to herself. The Paranormal Department, now dealing with larger events, had put the decision on what to do with him on hold. Yi Meng nodded secretly. This possibility is very high. Wait until tomorrow, I hope you can be smarter. With a calm face, Yi Meng sat down on the hospital bed. He hadn't hurt anyone right now, and he'd prevented a potential X-rated incident. Yimeng hopes that Star Dragon Federation can use a moderate method, at least the two sides can communicate together and win-win together. Otherwise, he can only break with the Star Dragon Federation and leave the current Supernatural Department. Certainly, this also means that Yimeng will be an enemy of the real world, just like the artificial intelligence in the dream in Doomsday, embarking on a path of no return that is the enemy of the whole world. It's not bad. I don't know if it was affected by the will of Doomsday. Yi Meng smiled, and there was a faint red light in his eyes. Yi Meng lay down on the hospital bed again, but she didn't fall asleep, but looked at the left arm covered with gray and white exoskeleton at a speed visible to the naked eye. It is estimated that in the past day, his left arm will be completely covered by Doomsday's exoskeleton. In less than a week, the real self will become Doomsday. Time is running out, and Yimeng's brain is like a host, deducing and thinking with extremely fast super thinking. How to deal with it? After being assimilated and invaded into Doomsday, the reality will not get out of control. Yi Meng quickly came up with 3 methods. The first method is to re-enter the dreamland of the DC universe. As long as he can completely control the incarnation of Doomsday in the dream, or he's still worried that the ability of Doomsday in reality cannot be controlled. This is the simplest, most effective, but also the most difficult and extremely risky method. In case the dream goes out of control directly, it won't be the end of the calf. The second method is to enter the dreamland of Marvel Universe. Facts have proved that as the incarnation of artificial intelligence, the acquired artificial intelligence characteristics have strengthened Yimeng's will to a certain extent, and played a very good role in his resistance to the desire to destroy the Destruction Day. Therefore, if more artificial intelligence characteristics can be obtained, and the desire for destruction can be resisted with absolute rationality, this may be possible. The problem is, Doomsday avatars invade the assimilated ego all the time. Yi Meng dared to be sure that when she was sleeping now, what she dreamed would definitely be the DC universe where the avatar of Doomsday was located, not the Marvel universe where the avatar of artificial intelligence was located. The third method, in the real world, is to find things that suppress or control the desire to destroy. Yi Meng now knows that there are many creations and existences of film and television works, and the invasion has come to the real world. So, in reality, it may also be possible to find things that curb the desire for self-destruction. For example, Tifa can provide some help. Yaimong constantly considers every method and effectiveness. 3 methods, corresponding to 3 different copies. DC Dream Copy, Marvel Dream Copy, and Real World Copy. The risk of exploring each copy and the loot are different. And there is not much time left for him. Don't sleep for now, wait until tomorrow to see what the views and attitudes of the Star Dragon Federation are towards me. Yi Meng made a decision, lying on the hospital bed and closing her eyes, pretending to sleep and actually closing her eyes to rest her mind. Now, there are only a few hours until dawn. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the sky is getting bright. A black vehicle is parked at the main entrance of the Paranormal Department building. The middle-aged detective with dark circles under his eyes got out of the car, followed by several senior detectives with the same dark circles under his eyes, who had obviously been up all night. Sir, team leader, including the young female detective, several detectives who stayed at the base of the supernatural department came out anxiously. They knew that the middle-aged detective was suddenly taken away by high-level personnel yesterday afternoon for investigation. I'm fine, I just had a few online meetings at night. The middle-aged detective waved his hand, but Fang Zheng's majestic face couldn't hide a trace of fatigue and heaviness. Last night, the inmate, high school student Yaimong, did nothing unusual. When the middle-aged detective asked here, he fixed his eyes on the young female detective. The young female detective trembled and shook her head hastily. I went to watch after I got up in the morning, nothing unusual. Take me to see. The middle-aged inspector waved his hand, and before anyone else could respond, he stepped into the main entrance vigorously. The middle-aged detective led a group of detectives to the outside of the highest-level isolation room. The inside could be seen through the one-way viewing glass. The silver-haired boy was still lying on the hospital bed and sleeping, but more than half of his left hand was covered with an exoskeleton. Sir, what happened? The young female detective looked at the frighteningly serious middle-aged detective and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The middle-aged inspector stared at the boy in the isolation room for a long time before sighing. The guardian dragon girl, something happened. What? Except for some senior agents who already knew about it, the other agents were shocked, as if watching the sky fall with their own eyes. The young female detective was also stunned, and covered her open mouth with her hand. How is it possible? That's a dragon girl. That's what it is. The middle-aged detective sighed. Yesterday afternoon, the headquarters announced that long news suddenly appeared abnormal. Yesterday afternoon, the young female detective remembers it very clearly. Yesterday afternoon, the dragon girl came here to test the inmates, and then suddenly lost her voice. That's why the headquarters asked me to assist in the investigation and participate in the meeting. The middle-aged detective nodded and said in a deep voice, Dragon girl. In the isolation room, Yi Meng was taken aback for a moment while maintaining a sleeping position and listening to the discussion by maintaining the external camera. Dragon girl really came. Couldn't it be a dream yesterday? Yi Meng recalled subconsciously. No, memories. The final discussion concluded that the abnormality of the guardian dragon girl may be caused by the excessive use of her own abilities. The middle-aged detective shook his head, but no matter what. Yesterday, all the containment things that the dragon girl came to explore need to be recovered. Imprisoned and transported to Kunlun, Tianlong Autonomous Prefecture, for further experimental research. Including him, the young female detective subconsciously looked at the high school student in the isolation room. The middle-aged detective said with a straight face, because of him, I held 2 additional high-level meetings yesterday. On the side of the Dakan Autonomous Prefecture, there is an officer with the rank of Lieutenant General who stands for him. Also, Dream Century, the first industry in our Tianhe city, announced a new technology with cross-age content, and claimed to the outside world that he is the genius inventor of this technology. A Lieutenant General officer, a genius scientist. How could it be? The young female detective looked confused. Before, wasn't he just an ordinary high school student? Normal. The middle-aged inspector shook his head and smiled strangely. Yesterday's federal college entrance examination results rankings have been announced, you can take a look. The young female detective immediately turned on her phone, opened the first trending search, and then froze. Star Dragon Federation, the global college entrance examination in 2020, the ranking is as follows. First, 800 points, full score, Yaimeng of Tianhe City. Second, 798 points, Mengtifa of Tianhe City. Third, 797 points, Yi Shenyu, Taihei City. Full score. The eyes of the young female detective stared straight. She hadn't had a perfect federal champion in so many years. And in their state, there is one in this city. Or, they are being detained by them. She finally understood why the inspector had to hold an extra meeting. The titles of Lieutenant General Officer, Genius Scientist, and Federal Champion are enough to make the outside world focus a lot of attention on high school student Yi Meng. If the other party is treated as an invasion and containment, then the invasion of this world may be exposed. So, what is the headquarters going to do? The young female detective asked with some expectation. The middle-aged detective sighed. It's a pity, a new seedling who can bring a lot of contributions to Star Dragon Federation in the future. So, the young female detective opened her eyes wide, unable to hide her disappointment. He has been corrupted by the invasion and we have no choice. The middle-aged detective lowered his eyes and his face sank like water. Imeng, a high school student, detained, and transferred to the Kunlun base. Pity. At the scene, many detectives also showed regret. Of course they don't know. At this time, Yi Meng himself was also quietly listening to all this. Fair enough. Yi Meng was extremely calm, and made a final decision in her heart at this moment. Year of the Star Dragon, 0200. The first day after the Federal College entrance examination. 6:10 in the morning. The night has been melting under the watery morning light, but the modern urban area is still filled with icy white fog, and the street lights, car lights, and advertising neon signs on the highways and streets are dimly lit. Today, Eastern Jurisdiction, Dakan Autonomous Prefecture, Tianhe City. Heavy fog. Tianhe City, Nanchang Area, Supernatural Department Branch Base. Pity. This is the top scorer with a perfect score, and he is still a genius with potential in the field of science. It's really a pity. The Federation will lose a talent, a genius, a son of tomorrow. Outside the highest level isolation single room, in the monitoring room and corridor on the third floor. All the detectives from the Supernatural Department sighed and felt extremely sorry. They obviously know that once they are transferred to Tianlong Autonomous Prefecture, the main state of the Eastern Jurisdiction as a containment object, this also means that the other party will disappear in this world, forever. Whether it is eternal detention, or experimental testing, or research and processing, they will completely break away from the status of Union citizen. The young female detective stared blankly at the silver-haired boy in the isolation room, and suddenly said, "We can actually cooperate and borrow his invasion power." Before the words were finished, the young female detective who had just joined the job obviously noticed something was wrong. Field. Most of the detectives kept their mouths tightly shut without saying a word, and stared at her with weird eyes. Several senior detectives who were familiar with the female detective kept shaking their heads and giving her winks. The young female detective gritted her teeth and continued to ask forcefully, "If he still has reason, wouldn't we be able to resist more invasions like borrowing the power of the patron saint?" The supernatural detectives at the scene changed their expressions in unison upon hearing this. "Shut up." The middle-aged detective, who had been silent all this time, let out a low growl, and quickly thrust his right hand towards the gun pouch on his waist, and then the muzzle of a large-caliber pistol was already coldly pressed against the female detective's forehead. The female detective's young and pretty face was pale, and it was the first time she saw the mature and stable officer in her impression, showing a gaff and gloomy side. "Sir, she's just a rookie," a male detective hastily persuaded. "Remember it for me." The middle-aged inspector stared at her coldly. "The patron saint is the miracle of our homeland, the true supreme awakened, and has been guarding the growing and glorious federal empire since 200 years. Modern invaders are all evil, trying to get their hands on the cancerous tumors of the world, and need unified containment and treatment." The female detective pursed her pale lips and nodded tremblingly. During this week, the mature and prudent Big Brother character suddenly made her feel a little strange and frightened. The protruding veins on the forehead of the middle-aged inspector faded away, and he said coldly, "There will be no next time. If you make any more demagogic or will-shattering views, you will be completely kicked out of the supernatural department, and you will need to accept further investigations. Mental appraisal." As he said that, he moved the pistol away, and continued to explain, Get ready, some high-level personnel from the headquarters are coming. At that time, we will hand over to them and transfer the intruders, including the high school student Yi Meng. Yes, sir, all the agents responded calmly in unison. Only the young female detective looked terrified and stood motionless. At this time, isolate in a single room. By maintaining the internal and external camera lens, Yi Meng observed the accidental farce absolutely rationally from the perspective of God. I see. At this moment, Yi Meng realized many things. Since 200 years ago, there have been some invasions including people from the Motherland, and they have come to this world. This is also the reason for the 30 years of blank history before the establishment of the Federation. The earliest batch of film and television invaders, most likely the existence of the villain lineup, ruled and established the Federal Empire. Moreover, in order to stabilize their own status and identity, they may have set a series of rules. For example, illegal intrusions after them are all evil and need to be approved by their detection. Even, including these supernatural funds distributed all over the world, the persons in charge may all be believers who have undergone a certain degree of brainwashing. In this way, everything is explained. Since this is the case, this federation doesn't matter. Yi Meng sneered in her heart. In a world with such a structure and truth, she would definitely resist, so it made no difference whether she turned the table now or later. Yi Meng has already made a decision and immediately deduced it in her heart. After leaving the supernatural department, you will definitely be wanted worldwide. You can go to the deep mountains or uninhabited deserted islands to deal with the invasion of Doomsday. Once he failed and reality spiraled out of control and it became Doomsday, it didn't matter. After all, the loss of reality ontology out of control means the death of Yi Meng's self-awareness. After his death, no matter the flood. And once he succeeds and walks on the path of Doomsday Superman, then everything doesn't matter. At that time, in this real world, there will be nothing that can restrain him. Whether it's the natives of the Motherland, or other invaders hiding behind the scenes of the Star Dragon Federation. All the rules are made by him. And at the same time that Yi Meng made the decision to leave, an agent suddenly shouted, "Sir, the near-Earth satellite detection shows that the area where our city is located is shrouded in thick fog, and the visibility is extremely low." Wait a minute, the fog should clear up. The middle-aged inspector nodded calmly in response. He noticed it outside just now, but Tianhe City is located in a basin, and it is actually normal for it to be a little foggy in the morning. However, a puzzled and anxious report came one after another. "Inspector, our communication with the outside world has suddenly been disconnected." "What?" The middle-aged inspector frowned and asked. "City internet phone signal, or satellite dedicated line signal?" All. The detective swallowed nervously. How is this possible? Some detectives hurriedly took out their mobile phones and turned on their computers, but all they saw were no signal notifications. Even the satellite line is disconnected. The middle-aged inspector noticed that something was amiss. Unless the satellite failed, the satellite dedicated line would not be disconnected from the ground branch. Moreover, the city network phone failed at the same time. And once the two fail at the same time, it also means that their supernatural department, or even the entire Tianhe City, has become a modern isolated island that isolates information from the outside world. An agent opened a window in the corridor on the third floor. Hoo-hoo. A strong wind suddenly poured into the supernatural branch building from the window, bringing with it a thick white mist, which even blurred the brightly lit interior. All the detectives were stunned. Of course, they have seen foggy days, but this is the first time they have seen such a serious and exaggerated fog in their lives. The white mist with extremely low visibility is like the dark shadow after nightfall, like the tide quickly flooding every corner inside and outside the house. "Close the window." The middle-aged inspector shrank his pupils and quickly gave instructions. But in front of the window, the male detective who opened the window looked dully at the white fog-filled outer city as if he didn't hear it. "What are you doing?" The middle-aged detective stepped forward quickly, and slammed the window shut with one hand, preventing the fog from entering the room, but the room was already covered in white. "Sir, there are strange creatures outside." The dull-eyed male detective finally came back to his senses, and then pointed out the window tremblingly, as if he saw something indescribable in the fog. The dense and cold white fog filled the outer city area with a vast expanse of whiteness, and the lights were dimmed in the fog, creating a strange and inexplicable atmosphere at the moment. Coupled with the terrified expressions and strange words of the detective colleagues, even the resolute detectives of the supernatural department trembled in their hearts. The middle-aged detective looked out the window solemnly. The white fog made the visibility more than 10 times lower than usual, and he could only see the black shadows of tall buildings not far away. Besides, how can there be living things? But no matter what, this white mist is obviously abnormal and unreasonable. It's even possible that the white mist or something moving in the white mist interfered with all communication signals. The middle-aged inspector only hesitated for a moment, and made a decisive decision. Everyone is ready for battle. Put on gas masks and protective clothing, equipped with conventional weapons and spare ammunition, and divide into 2 groups. One group will go out with me to understand the outside situation, and the other group stay here, be responsible for supporting and trying to contact the outside world at any time. Yes, sir. A group of agents from the Supernatural Department responded immediately. They were of excellent quality and moved quickly. Soon, the 6 detectives, who were fully protected and armed, left the department led by the middle-aged detective leader. Just about 10 meters away, their figures were shrouded in the surging white mist, and they could no longer be seen clearly. The 5 people, including the young female detective, stayed in the department building, trying to repair the network and get in touch with the outside world. All of a sudden, no one paid attention to the teenager in the highest level isolation room. The dense white mist that obscures the signal. Is there any creature in the white mist? Yi Meng was a little dazed. This weird situation reminded him of a film and television work in his previous life. It is very similar to the situation that suddenly happened in the real world at the moment. That movie, called Mist, of course, is not yet fully confirmed. Exactly. Yi Meng, who was pretending to be sleeping on the hospital bed, suddenly opened her eyes. A faint silver light and red light flashed in her eyes. She rolled over and landed. She was in the air. Her right hand, which was almost completely covered by the exoskeleton, clenched her fist, facing towards the floor of the isolated room. Punch. As the fist of the bone guard fell, the entire building of the supernatural department shook slightly, and the floor cracked with shocking cracks like spider webs. This power, this destructive power, absolutely not what humans can possess. No matter how powerful and destructive it is, Yi Meng has already experienced it in a dream. The young man's youthful and handsome face was extremely calm. The moment he landed, the 5 fingers of his right hand covered with gray and white bones stretched and then clenched again. His fist hit the center of the cracked net on the surface like a bone hammer. Boom! The building shook violently and rubble splashed everywhere. What happened again? The few detectives staying in the department building rushed into the monitoring room. When they saw the inner scene of the isolation room filled with dust waves, everyone stood there like a sculpture in a daze. It can be seen that there is a hole with a radius of 1 meter on the floor in the middle of the isolated single room, and the ground with steel plates was completely blasted, connecting it with the second floor below. My God! Everyone's pupils contracted and trembled violently like an earthquake, and they couldn't believe the scene in front of them. Especially the young female detective, who opened her mouth wide in astonishment, but at the same time showed a ray of relief. Container, number SAS 1666, Class E, high school student Iman escaped. Notify the chief. Contact the Kunlun headquarters. However, the inspector is exploring the white fog in the city outside, and all our communication signals with the outside world have been cut off. Inside and outside the supernatural branch, there was a sudden chaos. Some detectives from the left-behind branch rushed downstairs with guns in their hands, trying to take the escaped high school student Yi Meng back. The detectives were on the second and first floors, but couldn't find the boy, so they continued to chase out the door. Of course they couldn't think of it. At this time, Yi Meng, who had escaped from the isolation room, was still in the branch. Supernatural department, basement level. Yi Meng walked through the corridor to the deepest basement of the building. The cameras and alarms along the way did not send out an intrusion alarm. Stop in front of the iron gate with the red, containment alert, sign printed on it. Yi Meng looked at the portal that required pupil scanning verification authority, and with a thought, the built-in protection system was cracked and opened in the next second. Yi Meng pushed the door and walked in. The lights in the basement came on one after another, and rows of isolated shelves could be seen. Yi Meng invaded and looked at the database of the supernatural department, and knew that every city's supernatural department would have a containment and isolation basement, where some low-level containment items would be stored. For others, the intrusion containment that is frightening is an undiscovered treasure for Yimeng. After all, these intrusion containment objects all come from the world in previous life film and television works. Yimeng can clearly know the source and the true purpose and effect of these intruded items. Since he came to the supernatural department, he naturally couldn't miss it. Here, is there a containment that can restrain the desire to destroy the day of destruction? Yi Meng glanced towards the basement. On the isolation shelf in the basement, there was only 1 or 2 wooden shelves, each with an item placed on it. The number of storage items is pitifully small. But yes, if a city had so many containments from the world of film and television, then the world would have been in chaos. Yi Meng walked towards a wooden frame first, and saw a bone-biting horn placed on it. The bone horn is as exquisite as a handicraft, and it is covered with a leather belt. Below the bone horn, there is also a description of the contents. Invasion files. The mysterious horn. Invasion type. Creation. Intrusion number. SAS 699. Casualties caused. None. Intrusion level. Identified as G level. Invasion report. From the antique market in Tianhe City, according to the internal design of the test scan, the horn that can be sounded theoretically cannot be sounded by any means. Yi Meng froze for a moment. The horn of bones that cannot be blown. Why does this horn look more and more like the horn held by one of the heroines in the Chronicles of Narnia? The Chronicles of Narnia is a magical movie, and the creations in it naturally have a certain degree of magic. For example, this bone horn. Yi Meng remembers that as long as it is blown in the setting, the heroine will definitely get help, and it is true in the plot of the movie. Add luck. This is a must-have artifact for Mary Sue outdoors. Immediately, Yi Meng picked up the bone horn and blew it vigorously. The basement was filled with energy, but the bone horn didn't make any sound. Yi Meng tried again with physical means. Before the 5 fingers could exert any force, a crack burst out on the bone horn. Yi Meng was silent, thinking of 2 possibilities. One is that the horn lost its magical power when it invaded. The second is that this horn requires a specific person to use it normally, such as the heroine in the movie The Chronicles of Narnia. In other words, useless to him. Yi Meng put back the bone horn with a crack, and walked to the next isolation wooden frame. On this isolated wooden shelf, there is an old music box. Invasion archives. Music box. Invasion type. Creation. Intrusion number. SAS 1205. Casualties. 1 insane. Intrusion level. Identified as F level. Invasion report. The music box will automatically emit music in the middle of the night, and there are resentful spirits, which have been dealt with by the dragon girl. Oh, the creation in The Conjuring. Yi Meng looked at this old music box. In the movie, this thing was related to a boy with a not bad personality. However, since it has been dealt with by the dragon lady, I can only wish the wraith to rest in peace. Yi Meng knew that the power of the phoenix was basically the crushing of high-dimensional and low-dimensional creations with the power of the phoenix, unless the wraith came from a concept movie that was set to be impossible to kill. Yimeng shook her head and walked to the last isolation shelf where the intrusion containment was stored. He found that he had taken it for granted. There were so many movies invading creations, and many of them either had usage restrictions or were useless. How is it possible? I just met a very useful. Without hope, Yi Meng came to the last isolation wooden frame and looked up. Immediately, his eyes froze suddenly. Visible, on the isolated wooden stand, there is a delicate blue witch doll less than half the size of a palm. The doll is wearing a soft wizard hat with a high point and wide brim, and a head of curly blue hair protruding from under the snow-white soft hat. The witch doll has a delicate and noble face that is lifelike, her eyelashes are tightly closed, and her whole body is a mysterious dark blue complexion. The 4 small hands in front of her arms are gently clasped together, and she is covered by a white snow witch robe. 2 slender legs. Even if it is a puppet, the other party is sitting in a noble and dignified posture, with an extraordinary temperament. Honey, why are you here? Yi Meng looked at the puppet in a daze, and subconsciously blurted out. Chapter 51. Honey, why are you here? Yi Meng's words echoed slightly in the sealed basement. Of course, this wife is not that wife. In Yimeng's previous life, when she entertained until her death, a group called otaku liked to refer to the paper virtual heroines in games, anime, or movies as wife. This is because perhaps only virtual characters can achieve a certain degree of perfection in terms of appearance, connotation, personality, and ability. For example, the white Snow Witch robe witch doll currently placed on a separate isolated wooden shelf in the basement. This wizard hat, this snow cloak, these small hands, these blue thin legs engraved with mysterious inscriptions, this noble and mysterious high-ranking temperament made her lose her composure and swear. Isn't it exactly the same as the demigod witch Lani in Elden's Ring? The demigod and witch Lani, she was a truly ruthless person who killed herself first and finally destroyed the creator god in order to get rid of the restriction of the original law of the world. Yimeng was a little dazed, remembering that in the setting of Elden's Ring, there was also a similar little Lani doll, and that doll was connected to the soul of the demigod and witch herself. What appears here now, can't it be the real thing? Yimeng quickly looked at the data file of the intruded containment. Invasion archives. Witch dolls. Invasion type. Creation. Intrusion number. SAS 999. Casualties caused. None. Intrusion level. Identified as G level, lowest risk factor. Invasion report. The witch puppet appeared out of thin air on the stage of Tianhe City in 0199 in the year of the Star Dragon. After testing, no obvious energy or special features were found. After being checked by the Dragon Girl, potential dangers were ruled out. This intrusion report does not appear to be the real one. There was a hint of disappointment in Yimeng's eyes. If it hadn't appeared in the real world out of thin air, this puppet would not have been regarded as an invading creation. In addition, the Dragon Girl's phoenix power did not perceive the inner spirit, which further ruled out the possibility that it was the real thing. Yimeng's eyes returned to the lively and realistic witch doll. Now that she recalled the setting details, the left eye of the little Lani doll was always open, while this doll's eyes were closed. Yimeng reached out and touched the closed left eye of the witch doll. Following a cold and smooth touch from her fingertips, she found that the sealant was fixed and could not be broken apart. Apparently, it's just a highly imitated copy from another world. Even if it is genuine, it is completely disconnected from the soul of the witch behind the scenes on the way of the invasion and time travel. Pointless. Yimeng shook her head, and put the witch doll with closed eyes on the isolation wooden stand into her pocket with her backhand. It's here, but you can't leave empty-handed. Yimeng, who got nothing but the handicrafts of his wife from the previous life, turned around and walked towards the door of the basement. At this time, the supernatural department building was in chaos inside and outside. A strange and dense white mist floated everywhere, the network communication signal between the city and the outside world was interrupted, the detective who led the team out of the department disappeared, and the high school students imprisoned in the isolation room escaped. One thing after another, the agents of the supernatural department were a little overwhelmed. Moreover, several agents who stayed behind in the supernatural department also discovered. In the white mist, there are really living creatures. Unknown creatures that don't belong in their world. Boom, boom. A number of unknown flying creatures that have never been seen before smashed through the window. They look like small pterosaurs, their dark eyes are constantly turning, and they are flapping their wings and breaking into the inner hunting. Under the cover of the white mist, there are fast shadows. With the warning and roar of the left-behind detectives, there was a sound. Inside the supernatural department, fierce gunshots continued to ring out. The flames of the muzzles continued to emerge in the room filled with white mist, and the armed agents fought with the flying creatures from the white mist outside. Some flying creatures were smashed into a sieve by bullets and fell to the ground. An armed agent was sprayed with a mouthful of black mucus, and the protective clothing on his body was corroded and melted like a strong acid. He fell to the ground and screamed, and was ripped apart by a creature's sharp claws the next moment. Flying creatures originating from the strange and dense white mist in the outside world seem to be endless, and they are extremely good at hunting in the white mist. Even the left-behind agents who were armed and protected fell to the ground one after another, surrounded and killed by flying creatures as food. "Run away, Yingzi!" shouted an agent who had fallen to the ground. The bullets in the gun of the young female detective have been emptied. She saw 3 flying creatures covered in blood flying towards her. Zhao Hao turned pale and rushed downstairs. Be smashed. Hoo. Detective Eiko was gasping for breath, making the goggles of the gas mask blurry, coupled with the thick white mist that filled the room. The department environment that she had been familiar with for a week became even stranger than when she first saw it, causing her to stumble fled indiscriminately. So, until you go down the stairs, you enter a wide, long and clean corridor inwards. Only then did Yingzi realize that he had come to the basement floor. Except for the inspector, no one in the department had the authority to enter here. Yingzi wanted to turn around, but found 3 flying creatures flying down the stairs, so he could only continue to flee inside. Wait, the basement door. How did it open? Chased by demonic flying creatures in the fog, Yingzi raised his eyes, and in a blur, he saw that the door of the basement was open. She gritted her teeth and rushed there. And at the moment Yingzi rushed into the door desperately, a slender figure just walked out of it. It was a teenager. The boy's quick reaction turned sideways, causing Yingzi to rush into the air and crash into the inner part of the basement. Without hesitation, the boy continued to walk towards the underground corridor leading to the outside world. Be careful, there are monsters. Before Yingzi finished speaking, he stopped abruptly, and his pupils froze suddenly. Facing the oncoming 3 flying creatures, the silver-haired boy stretched out his left and right hands covered with gray and white bone sheaths like lightning. Each of his hands strangled a flying creature that was flying forward, and then continued to move forward vigorously. Pat to the 3rd creature. Boom! Not even a howl came out. Blood exploded in the palms of the boy's closed bony hands. The head and body of the 3 flying creatures were directly flattened, and the white mist in the corridor was dyed a little scarlet. Get it all done. The silver-haired boy threw away the limp corpse of the flying creature, and swung his hands vigorously, shaking off all the black venom, mucus and blood attached to the gray-white exoskeleton. Glove. You are. Yingzi stared in astonishment at the familiar high school boy in the corridor outside. The silver-haired boy turned his head, and in the thick white mist, one eye faintly flashed a violent and destructive red light, which was soon covered by a rational and indifferent silver light. He didn't say anything, and left directly into the corridor. It wasn't until the figure of the other party completely disappeared in the underground corridor surrounded by white mist that the young female detective Yingzi murmured in a low voice, "It's him." Contain the intruder, high school student Imei. Yi Meng walked out of the basement of the containment and left the supernatural department directly. The supernatural investigators could not protect themselves, and no one could stop him even if he was there. Outside, the white mist lingers and permeates the entire modern city, making everything blurry. Only black shadows that don't know whether they are living things or objects appear. Screams, roars, horns, sirens, falling objects, broken windows, and even gunshots, the mournful cries of the entire city, clearly entered into the inhuman hearing of Yaimeng, who was constantly heading towards the Doomsday. Chilling, mysterious, strange, surprising, etc., the atmosphere is accompanied by white fog covering the city. Yi Meng hung the Lani doll on his waist as a pendant. He just walked out of the door of the department, exposed to the white mist of the outside world, and was hunted down by several flying creatures in the mist. Who hunted whom? The expression on Yi Meng's face remained unchanged. The 5 fingers of her right hand were stretched out straight, and the whole arm covered with a thin gray-white exoskeleton was like a bone knife. The hand rises and the knife falls. Yi Meng is like a robot without mistakes, repeating the fierce action of beheading. The speed is accompanied by the strong wind of hunting, and a flying creature with its head and body separated falls to the ground. After a while, the dozens of flying creatures that attacked and killed all fell to the ground. Yi Meng looked indifferently at the other flying creatures that fled and retreated, grabbed half of the deformed corpse of a bird-like beast, and wiped all the blood on the exoskeleton of his right hand. It's really the mist, Yi Meng whispered. Seeing this deformed pterosaur-like creature with its own corrosive venom, Yaimeng immediately affirmed that the white mist and the creatures in the white mist originated from fog. The Mist is a sci-fi movie. The movie tells that due to the military base experiment in the town, a fog enveloped the town area, and there are terrible creatures from other worlds in the fog. At present, this strange bird and beast with its own corrosive venom is one of the terrifying creatures that appear in the mist. Besides these, there are many larger, stronger and more terrible creatures, born of the mist. Among them, there are even mysterious creatures similar to Cthulhu. I'm afraid this city is about to end. Yaimeng recalled some details and settings in the fog. Although it was not mentioned in the movie, it can be speculated that the experiment on the military base connected the space where the town is located with another Cthulhu-like dimension. That's why the mist and a large number of alien creatures gushed out. Now, the situation in Tianhe City and the small town can't be said to be similar, it can only be said to be exactly the same. Does this mean that the entire city is connected with the invasion dimension from mist? If it is really the situation that Yaimeng imagined, then in the real world, no one can stop this tragedy in Tianhe City. Even people from the Motherland can't do it. This is an invasion incident that can be at least classified as SSS level. What does that have to do with me? Yaimeng's face was expressionless, and she looked at her left hand, which was also completely covered with gray and white exoskeleton. Now, his hands have obviously been assimilated by the Doomsday invasion in the dream. Even, together with character, Yaimeng felt that she was becoming less and less like a real human being. For example, facing the current fog and the monsters in the fog, she didn't feel a trace of fear, only the excitement of destruction and killing. This fog has reduced the entire city to a hunting ground for creatures from other dimensions. For Yaimeng, who is being assimilated by the invasion of the Doomsday, it is an excellent and wonderful venue for destruction, which makes him want to enter the fog to find the most powerful existence, and destroy and ravage the opponent to obtain satisfaction. As for the survival of the city, what does it have to do with him? Tifa, Yaimeng suddenly murmured to herself, and looked towards the direction of the city center shrouded in mist. A trace of humanity reappeared in her slightly red eyes. In this city, he only cares about one person. Yaimeng speeded up her pace towards the city center, and as soon as she picked up the speed, she jumped out like a cheetah. With each step she could cover 3 or 4 meters, and she even ran faster and faster in the white mist. Perhaps because of the bloody smell of the mist bird on his body, no mist bird dared to attack him, and even ran away when they met him. Hunter reversed. Supernatural Department, basement level, containment basement. The young female detective Yingzi slumped on the ground, and only after 10 seconds came back to her senses did she grit her teeth and stand up. Because of seeing Yaimeng, Yingzi found that the white mist was not toxic, so he took off the gas mask he was wearing and breathed in the cold and bloody foggy air. We must go up and save people. Yingzi thought of other detective colleagues upstairs whose life and death were uncertain, gritted her teeth and got up again, but just as she was about to leave the basement, a small voice suddenly came from the empty basement. She turned around suddenly. Is that the trumpet? In the mist, Yaimeng was walking faster and faster in the urban area, reaching the normal speed of a car. Accompanied by a clear cracking sound, the canvas shoes on her feet were directly smashed by herself. Along with the cement pavement, a shallow footprint was also cracked. Yaimeng looked down and saw the soles of her feet. The protruding bones and knuckles also showed a layer of hard gray bone. The fog of killing intensified the desire for self-destruction, which also accelerated the speed of the invasion and assimilation of Doomsday. Yaimeng Mingwu, if this continues, he will completely lose control and become the day of destruction in 3 days. Under such invasion and assimilation, he scanned the surroundings, his eyes had a faint red glow, and his vision began to become clearer. Even under the fog with extremely low visibility, you can clearly see things 100 meters away. Fog shrouded the city, and less than 10 minutes had passed. Now, the streets of the modern city are empty. Many vehicles have been involved in a series of accidents, parked on the road or crashed into buildings. Thick smoke rises everywhere in the fog. On the ground of a messy modern street, all kinds of garbage and blood can be seen everywhere, as well as the corpses of humans or misty birds, and even the deformed flesh of other creatures. The human beings outside the house have almost been hunted and killed, and many residents are hiding in the house and dare not come out. Imin quickly understood the current situation of the city, and he hoped that Tifa could also stay in the house temporarily, so as not to become the first hunting targets of the creatures in the mist. Continue on your way to the city center where Tifa's house is located. Yaimeng's ears moved slightly, and she heard the fierce gunshots coming from the city a kilometer ahead, but the gunshots were getting weaker and weaker, and there was still the scream of dying in it. Could it be? Within 100 meters of the gunshots, Yaimeng jumped 5 meters high and stood steadily on a street lamp that was turned off. The fog is lingering. Even if you stand under the street lamp, you will not find someone standing on the street lamp. Yi Meng looked up, her eyes pierced through the thick fog, and found that it was indeed the armed detective team of the middle-aged detective leader of the supernatural department. However, now there are only 2 people left, including the middle-aged detective. In front of them, in the mist, stood a nearly 5-meter-tall mantis-like creature. The misty mantis's body was full of bullet holes, but it still made a sharp and ear-piercing cry. It was like a tank crawling forward. As the large sharp mantis in its right hand swung down, the air in the body of an armed agent was cut directly. "Sir!" The armed detective's screams stopped abruptly, and blood splashed all over the middle-aged detective behind him. The middle-aged detective pulled the trigger in front of the misty mantis, but the gun was empty. The bullet clip in the rifle in his hand had already been emptied. Monster! Invading monster! The middle-aged detective threw away his gun, looked blankly at the dead detectives all around him, then raised his head and smiled miserably at the misty mantis, who raised a large praying knife towards him. Ended. Yi Meng watched indifferently, but didn't intend to make a move. They don't know each other well. But at this moment, Yi Meng noticed something. Her pupils were slightly red, and she was able to vaguely see into the middle-aged detective's body. At this moment, something awakened in the opponent's body, so that the genetic chain was broken, and the blood boiled like water. Ah! The middle-aged detective wailed in pain. The upright human face distorted and deformed into a triangle, and the body also continued to expand like a balloon. Under the scrutiny of Yi Meng's indifferent eyes, the middle-aged detective was lying on the ground. His flesh and blood body was twisted and stretched, and the horns and outer skin protruded, turning into a triceratops. That's right, it's the triceratops of the Cretaceous period, a living dinosaur. Inspector, the top person in charge of the supernatural department of Tianhe City, turned into a triceratops. Yi Meng's pupils shrank, and her thoughts flowed quickly, connecting many things together. He muttered to himself, 200 years ago, a dragon took off in the east. So it is. Yi Meng suddenly understood. In addition to the guardian dragon girl on the surface, there is really a dragon in the eastern jurisdiction. A dragon hiding in the dark and controlling the Federation. In the fog-shrouded city, the middle-aged detective who monitors and prevents the invasion turns into a triceratops monster and fights with the mist mantis. Yi Meng watched this scene coldly, and thought through many things at once. Previously, due to the arrival of the guardian goddess dragon girl, he mistakenly believed that in the myths circulated by the real Star Dragon Federation, the soaring dragon referred to the dragon girl. But looking back now, there is a doubtful point. Even with the power of the phoenix, the physique of the other party is still an ordinary person. How could it be possible to live from 200 years ago to the present? So, maybe in the real world, there really is a dragon. The reason why Yi Meng thinks this way is because in the previous movie he knew, there really was a villain who could control dinosaur monsters. It's just that it was an extremely vicious black python. Later, it failed to snatch the Dragon Ball with another snake and was punished and killed by the Dragon of Justice. That movie, called War of the Dragons. Yi Meng's eyes fell back to the cruel battlefield ahead. The middle-aged inspector turned into a 3-meter-tall, 9-meter-long triceratops monster. His hard and rough cortex held up the large mantis for slashing. And below, the slim body of the misty mantis was directly trampled into meat paste. Hold head high. The eyes of the triceratops monster showed ferocity, showing a posture of victory and fighting spirit, and it was roaring with its head up, but in the next moment, several large tentacles protruded from the mist, tightly entangled its thick neck and forelegs. Tread. The triceratops monster struggled desperately, stretching the large tentacles with sucker meatballs straight, but it was difficult to break free from the shackles of the tentacles. Instead, more tentacles continued to protrude from the depths of the mist, entangled its body and limbs. Rustle. Several large tentacles exerted force together, dragging the terrified and struggling triceratops forward abruptly, into the depths of the mist. In the depths of the mist, a dark bloody mouth opened and swallowed the huge head of the triceratops in one gulp. Coupled with the continuous entanglement of several dozens of meters-long tentacles, the movement and sound of the triceratops' struggle quickly stopped. The huge tentacle meat mountain in the mist continued to squirm for a while, until it swallowed the entire Triceratops monster, and unsatisfied stretched out a sucker tentacle, and rolled back the previous corpse of the mist mantis. With supervision, Yi Meng could see clearly. It was a large octopus-shaped monster, as large as a 4- or 5-story building, like a strange mountain of meat waving its tentacles constantly. It had been in the mist before, lurking motionless, like the shadow of a building, and it didn't hunt until now. The misty tentacle monster devoured the 6-meter-tall misty mantis and the middle-aged detective in the form of a triceratops all at once. Gululu. In the constantly wriggling meat mountain, several pairs of small eyes frantically turned, looking at the street lamp dozens of meters away, and then a tentacle popped out. "Oh, did you find me?" The corner of Yimeng's mouth raised a cruel arc, and the violent red light that he was suppressing emerged from his eyes. Facing the attacking large tentacles, he remained motionless, letting the large tentacles wrap around his waist and roll back. The strong wind howled, and a mouthful of foul-smelling blood opened again, like an abyss. Compared with the misty tentacle monster, the physique of human beings is more than 10 times different. Just like mice and ligers, they appear extremely fragile and small. The misty tentacle monster tried to stuff the tentacle-wrapped human teenager into its mouth just like it had devoured countless human beings before. But at this moment, a pair of gray and white bone feet kicked out suddenly, stepping on the two ends of the blood plate's mouth from left to right. No matter how tight the blood plate's mouth seemed to be, it was difficult to continue to close it. This creature, why is it different from other creatures of the same kind living here? The misty tentacle monster was extremely confused, and its tiny eyes, which turned wildly, met a pair of violent and destructive pupils in front of it. "You want to eat me? Do you deserve it?" Yi Meng said in a cold voice with no expression on her face. The misty tentacle monster couldn't understand his words, but he could feel a trembling breath emerging from the opponent. That is, irresistible and powerful. Laugh. Before the mist tentacle monster could react, the tentacles that entangled the young man suddenly broke into 2 pieces, and the incision was as smooth as a saw. The severed tentacles have not landed yet. Yimeng, who broke free from the shackles, stepped on the meat mountain and jumped forward. He didn't escape or dodge, but took the initiative to pounce on the head of the misty tentacle monster, and stab the forehead above the eyes with a knife in his right hand. The arm is almost completely submerged in it. The misty tentacle monster immediately let out a painful hiss, and several tentacles twitched wildly at the same time, causing the fog in the area to surge, and the broken tentacles healed extremely quickly. Rumble. The nearby street lamps and vehicles were deformed and flew upside down by the large tentacles, and the outer wall of the adjacent building was also dented by the large body. However, Yi Meng was still firmly nailed to the head of the misty tentacle monster. No matter how the tentacle monster struggled, he remained indifferent. His left arm also sank into the soft flesh, and then his left and right hands pulled it out forcefully. In this instant, the flesh, muscles, bones, and inner tissues were all broken. The vehicle-sized head was directly torn in half by the bone hand. The tentacles dancing wildly and the wriggling and rolling body of the misty tentacle monster stopped abruptly, and then collapsed like a real mountain of meat. "Who do you think you are?" The silver-haired boy stood on the huge corpse of the misty tentacle monster, with a crazy and violent grin on his face, and the soles of his feet covered with gray-white exoskeleton continued to pedal down, and each foot was stronger than the other. Until the end, with the strength and speed of breaking through the sonic boom, the huge head of the misty tentacle monster was completely crushed. ZZ. Blood splattered. It seems to obtain a certain sense of destruction satisfaction from this. The unemotional red light in the eyes of the silver-haired boy finally faded away, and the cold gray exoskeleton on his feet, which looked like white bone armor, began to spread from the soles of his feet to his knees, and the protruding muscles and bones were covered with bone patterns first. Yi Meng lowered her eyes indifferently, looking down at the large, bloody corpse at her feet, and the modern city surrounded by fog. All conspiracies, all strange and powerful, appear vulnerable before absolute destruction. After possessing the avatar of Doomsday, nothing in this world is enough to shake or frighten him. He has always been only an enemy of himself. Because he is the most powerful and terrifying monster in the real world. Before the desire for destruction completely overwhelms reason, the silver-haired boy whispered. Yi Meng squatted slightly. The strength of the legs covered with the exoskeleton was increasing every moment, and now it had reached a terrifying level. Tread. As soon as he moved, the strong wind blew away the fog in place, and the confused and swift figure jumped towards the central city area tens of meters away. The fog where it passed was forcefully dispersed all the way, leaving behind a strange inhuman movement track, which was soon submerged by the surging fog, only the red pupils flickering on and off. The doomsday of the real world is approaching. Tianhe City, the central city. The fog is lingering, and countless huge unknown creatures move through the fog. Some are like vehicles, some are like hills, and the entire modern city has been reduced to a purgatory on earth, with screams and fierce sounds from time to time. A luxury residential area with every inch of golden land. More than a dozen military tanks and armed vehicles drove on the city road, walked slowly through the fog, pushed the vehicles away, and fired a bunch of shells and dense bullets from time to time, repelling the monsters in the fog with fierce firepower. Kaka. Armed tanks and soldier vehicles stopped in front of a private house with iron bars and a yard. Be alert on the spot. A heavily armed local military officer dismounted from the passenger seat of the vehicle. In about 10 seconds, 2 butlers came out from the private residence and opened the iron gate. Immediately afterwards, the door of the private residence opened, and a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes with great temples walked out under the protection of 2 bodyguards. You are the chairman of Dream Century Technology Industry, Mr. Meng. The local officer saluted and said in a deep voice, I am the local colonel stationed in Tianhe City, and I am here to protect the safety of you and your family. Mr. Meng breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the words, and looked at the dense fog around him. That's great. With you here, we can rest assured. The local officer nodded, and quickly said, please clean up immediately and evacuate with us. Evacuate. Mr. Meng was taken aback. His face became serious again, as the situation so serious. It's not very optimistic. We are continuing to organize the evacuation of survivors towards the military base in the east of the city, and then arrange human escorts to evacuate out of the city. The local military officers didn't hide him either. After all, the whole city was in crisis now, and even if they wanted to, they couldn't hide it. He urged, please prepare to evacuate as soon as possible. In addition to you, we are also responsible for evacuating other survivors in many cities. I see. Knowing the urgency of the situation, Mr. Meng couldn't help speeding up his pace and immediately returned to his private residence. Residential interior. The middle-aged lady who had been hiding in the basement walked out with the help of a young man. A white-collar woman and a black-haired girl also came out. Honey, how's it going outside? The middle-aged lady worriedly looked at Mr. Meng, who returned to the room with a solemn face. Mr. Meng glanced at everyone, and said helplessly, the military is here, let us evacuate, head towards the eastern military base, and then use this to withdraw from the city. As soon as this was said, the people in the house fell silent, and the need to evacuate the city was enough to see the seriousness of the situation. It shows that the military is still unable to fully deal with the inherent mysterious crisis of controlling the city. Mr. Meng smiled, and said calmly enough, let's go. Life is important. Other cities also have our industries. At worst, we start from scratch. The middle-aged lady echoed. That's right, let's prepare now, just bring important items, and leave other heavy things. As soon as the two spoke, it was basically settled. Evacuate the city with the army. But at this moment, a sweet and determined girl's voice sounded, evacuate to the east of the city, I'm going to the south of the city. On the field, everyone's complexion changed suddenly, and they looked at the black-haired girl with puzzled and dignified expressions. Miss Chen Hong looked anxiously at the black-haired girl beside her. She naturally knew that Yaimeng was being detained in the southern part of the city. Just give me a car, Mengtifa said without doubt. She glanced at everyone on the field, and her clear and calm eyes finally fell on Mr. Meng. I see. Mr. Meng closed his eyes heavily, then opened them again, took out a bunch of car keys from his pocket, and handed them over. The moment he handed over the car keys, he lowered his voice and said to the black-haired girl, thank you for your help 3 years ago. I should be grateful. It is you who gave me a home in this world. Tifa smiled slightly, took the key, put it in his pocket and walked towards the underground garage. Father, Mother, it's very dangerous outside, how can we let her leave alone? The young man looked anxiously at his parents. Mr. Meng shook his head and said in a deep voice, you know that. Once she makes a decision, she will never change her mind. The middle-aged lady sighed, feeling extremely regretful. Sure enough, she will leave our house sooner or later. Chen Hong stomped her feet, but still chased after the girl. 5 minutes later, under the surprised eyes of all the army soldiers, an off-road vehicle drove out of the underground garage of a private residence, accelerated into the white mist and drove away. Next door, in another private house, Wang Zan was preparing to evacuate with the army. He faintly saw the figure of a graceful girl sitting on the driver's seat of the off-road vehicle. He was taken aback for a moment and then laughed wildly. Crazy, she is really crazy. The off-road vehicle drove out of the private residential area, onto the deserted road, and escaped into a quiet white mist. This fog, it's too difficult to see the road clearly. While speaking, Chen Hong in the driver's seat firmly grasped the steering wheel. Fear made her body tremble continuously, but she still had to concentrate on avoiding the bunker. Tifa on the passenger seat looked at her and sighed. Aunt Chen, actually you don't need to accompany me. Stop talking nonsense. Chen Hong gritted her teeth and said, I've said it before, the only thing I want in this life is to watch you get happiness, miss. The words are not finished yet. The off-road vehicle seemed to have directly crashed into a mysterious creature that jumped out of the mist, and the car window burst into cracks, leaving bloodstains. What? Chen Hong was astonished, and subconsciously wanted to stop the car. Don't stop, keep driving. But Tifa directly inserted her slender white foot and stepped on the gas pedal. The off-road vehicle continued to stagger out in the fog. Immediately afterwards, the rear of the car seemed to be scratched by something, leaving a shocking tear and scratch. Chen Hong was still in shock, and continued to drive the off-road vehicle. Then drive a certain distance to the south of the city. Behind him, the reassuring sound of shells is fading away. The farther south you go, the less people there are, and finally it seems that only the 2 people in the car are left in the whole fog. Chen Hong began to gradually adapt to driving in the fog, constantly avoiding the bunker, but at this moment, the white fog in the urban area ahead seemed to wrap around the off-road vehicle that was driving slowly forward. That's spider silk. Tifa opened her beautiful eyes and said quickly. Chen Hong was startled, and looked at the cracked windshield, and there were indeed a lot of white spider silk wrapped around the car body. These white spider webs, almost blending with the mist, become a perfect trap. Reverse. Tifa's reaction was fast enough, but it was still a step too late. The off-road vehicle was already deeply embedded in the spider web, and black spiders the size of adult cats climbed onto the body along the spider web. Cobwebs and spiders densely surrounded the off-road vehicle. Miss, it's all my fault. Seeing this, Chen Hong was horrified and regretful. Don't give up, we will survive. Tifa spoke forcefully, reaching into her pocket as if about to take something out. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Boom. The ground surface was sunken, accompanied by the loud sound of some kind of heavy object falling on the road beside the car. The swarm of fog spiders the size of adult cats panicked for a while, and then receded like a tide, returning to the fog, as if they were afraid of some terrible existence. What happened? Chen Hong was at a loss. Tifa stared blankly out of the car window, and could see a figure walking towards him in the mist, with a faint silver light flickering. Without the slightest hesitation, Tifa pressed the unlock button, her slender and tight legs bent and kicked violently, kicking open the car door that was entangled in spider webs. Miss! Under Chen Hong's startled shout and gaze. The black-haired girl rushed out of the car in a hurry, opened her hands, and threw herself into the arms of the figure in the mist. You found me. I knew it, you would come to me. Tifa hugged the man's neck tightly with both hands, her beautiful eyes sparkled. How could it be that he? Chen Hong in the car looked at the familiar figure walking out of the white mist. Could it be that boy named Yi Meng? But when she saw Yi Meng's current situation clearly, Chen Hong's face froze, and her body trembled uncontrollably. Visible. The hands and arms of the silver-haired boy were all covered with a layer of gray-white exoskeleton. The shoes were gone long ago, the trousers were broken into half-length trousers, and the exposed legs and feet were also covered with a layer of gray-white exoskeleton. There is a cute and petite witch doll hanging on his waist, but he is terrifying and weird. The exoskeleton even spreads from the neck to the face, like wearing a small half-gray bone mask fake. The exoskeleton is mixed with molten iron to create an assembly line arc, which perfectly fits the young Xincheng's body shape, just like a bone armor. There were even hideous bone spurs protruding faintly from the opponent's arm and back. Half human, half bone monster, this is the image of a teenager today. Yi Meng sniffed the faint fragrance of the black-haired girl's hair, the red light in her eyes disappeared a little, revealing a rational silvery look, and gently embraced the girl with her exoskeleton hands. Yes, I found you. It's not bad to see you again before you are completely lost into destruction. There is no water. You can say less, but there is really no hydrology. I believe that each chapter has content and details, and this recent realistic plot will have a profound impact on the future. In the Doomsday City and the weird fog, two people, one big and one small, hug each other. The younger girl is in her budding youth, her smooth black hair cascading down to her waist like a waterfall. She is wearing a coat vest and tight leather pants due to emergency escape, but she still outlines a graceful and exquisite moving curve. Wearing gloves and leather boots, the skin exposed to the mist is so fair and smooth that it flows with light. Even in the current situation, it is still noble and beautiful. It is indeed reasonable to rely on looks and appearance alone to have star-level fans on the internet, and to make the stock of Dream Century Industries rise. But Chen Hong knew very well that the eldest lady, Meng Tifa, was definitely not a vase. Under the beautiful appearance, her personality, talent, vision, temperament, etc. were all first class. She is a truly perfect beauty embryo, and the whole world will be amazed by her in 2 years when she matures and blends into her youth. But at this time, with the petite and beautiful girl in his arms, the older boy was scary. Most of the originally slender body was covered with an exoskeleton, making it look taller and stronger. The tendons and body shape were in an assembly line, and the clothes on his body were torn by hideous and smooth bone spurs. Starting from the corner of the right eye, the young and handsome face is also covered with a small bone-like mask. The right eye is faintly pulsating with an inextinguishable red flame, and an aura of killing and destruction lingers and rises. On the ground behind the silver-haired bone spur boy, a cracked and sunken pothole can be vaguely seen. It is conceivable that the young man fell from the sky just now, leaving such traces on the concrete road. Not to mention the mist spider just now, Chen Hong still felt chills all over while watching this scene, and wanted to go forward and drag the eldest lady back. Beauty and the Beast didn't dare to act like this, it was clearly a beautiful girl and a monster. One day passed, what happened to Yi Meng? Chen Hong couldn't understand. In the white mist, Tifa naturally also noticed the abnormality of Yi Meng's body at the moment, but her left hand still tightly clasped the boy's neck, her eyes fell on her deformed beauty, and her right hand naturally touched the exoskeleton on her chest. Her beautiful eyes as soft as rubies still contained tears of joy, and her ruddy mouth, which was so soft without a trace of wrinkle, was slightly opened. Instead of being afraid, she showed a curious and exploring expression, and she directly poked it with her slender index finger, musculoskeletal fingers, as if touching iron. No, it is obviously much harder than iron. It's so tough, Tifa exclaimed in amazement. That smart and playful, cute yet hot look was no different from the past. Yi Meng's tired and exhausted body and mind seemed to have been baptized, and suddenly wanted to laugh. He knew that Tifa was worried that he cared too much about his current appearance, so he first stated that he didn't care about it. Aren't you afraid? Yi Meng asked calmly. You mean the spider just now? It's really scary, it's so big. Tifa blinked. I mean, me. Yi Meng and Tifa's eyes met closely, and pointed to himself. Aren't you Yi Meng? There's nothing to be afraid of. You saved me just now. If it wasn't for you, I would have been gnawed into a white skeleton by spiders. Tifa stuck out her tongue, then reacted immediately, punched the exoskeleton with a clang, and said through gritted teeth, You don't think you want to dump me, scumbag? After 3 years, want to run away after eating and wiping off? That's not okay, I'm very difficult. As she said that, the girl was furious, a bit tough and unladylike, and jumped forward to wrap her legs around the boy's body, like a large doll clinging tightly to the boy's body. Seeing this, Chen Hong's heart trembled in the car, for fear that a bone spur in his back would directly poke a hole in the young lady's leg. And next, Chen Hong's eyes were staring straight, and she almost collapsed in her seat from fright. Visible. Just when Iman and Tifa reunited and talked, a giant shadow the size of a hill squirmed out of the mist, and quickly approached the moving and crawling creature. Several large suction cup tentacles protruded from the mist first. Miss. Chen Hong called with a trill. Tifa, who was hanging on Yi Meng's body, also noticed the situation behind Yi Meng, opened her beautiful eyes and said, Yi Meng, behind you. I know, just close your eyes. Yi Meng said, it is good. As death approached, Tifa really closed her eyes, only her thick eyelashes trembling slightly, which showed her unimaginable confidence and trust in Yimeng. Rustle. The large tentacles stretched out towards Tifa and Yimeng in an outflanking manner. Chen Hong showed a look of despair, recognizing that it was a monster that the army had to bombard with shells. On the nick of time, Yi Meng carefully supported the girl's body with the palm of her left hand, turned around slightly, and jumped forward. The slowest speed under restraint was still faster than the tentacles. The strong wind blew, the mist surged, and the huge black shadow revealed a huge body of a misty tentacle monster like a mountain of meat. Yi Meng clenched her fist with her right hand and swung it straight forward. The gray-white fist end that looked like a smooth exoskeleton glove turned into an afterimage, and the air in front of it burst open layer by layer, followed by the explosion followed by the mountain of meat touched by the fist end. The unparalleled extraordinary power penetrated and broke through everything. Sonic booms and storms follow. Boom. Chen Hong's eyes were dull, looking at Roshan's body that was sunken, festered and then burst open under this punch, and saw the 1,000-meter fog that filled the urban area in front of him washed away by the aftermath of this punch. This is the legendary power that can only be possessed by gods, but it is manifested in the hands of a boy who turned into a monster. How could she know that even if the gods came in person, she would turn around and run away? This is the power called Doomsday. What's wrong? Did the monster run away? Tifa's eyes were still closed. She didn't know what happened just now, she just felt like she was on a roller coaster. Well, I ran away, I can open my eyes now. Yi Meng nodded her head lightly, retracted her fist, and the red flames surging in her eyes became stronger again. Really? Tifa opened her eyes and looked around. Sure enough, she couldn't see the tentacle monster just now. It's just that there are countless pieces of meat left on the surrounding roads, and the fog surged back again to cover up everything that happened just now. As the only person who witnessed the brief battle just now, Chen Hong was completely silent. The monster did run away, back to its own dimension, to hell. Are you okay? Tifa didn't care what happened to the monster. She checked him in situation immediately worried, and saw a little bit of gray continued to spread on her face, and the mask-like exoskeleton was about to cover half of her face. As for Yi Meng's face, there was only the body area that was not covered by the exoskeleton. Yi Mengyu let the girl touch her hard exoskeleton mask, raised her hand to touch the other's hair, and then paused after realizing something. I'm fine, this city is very dangerous, everything will be discussed after we evacuate the city bar. But Tifa reached out to hold his hard and cold bone hand, and agreed, okay, we will find a way to deal with your current situation after we leave the city. No problem. Yi Meng smiled, sent Tifa back to the passenger seat of the car, and greeted the woman in the driver's seat by the way. You, hello. Chen Hong shivered, as if facing a god and demon, and said in awe and caution, do we need to go to the military base in the east of the city? Now, the army will evacuate the survivors there, and organize armed protection to form a defense line, and evacuate all survivors from the city from the eastern suburbs. She was worried that Yi Meng would become the target of the army in his current state. And this will be a very terrible thing for the army. No, we're not going east. Yi Meng shook her head directly. Let's leave to the west of the city. West. Tifa blinked. The west of the city and the military base in Tianhe City were exactly in the opposite direction. Yi Meng said calmly, you don't think that the misty tentacle monster just now is the strongest and largest creature in the mist? No way. Chen Hong's eyes widened in horror, and her face instantly turned pale. There are even bigger monsters. The mist tentacle monster is the size of a hill and a building, and it needs to be beaten back with tank shells to open the way. How big is the even bigger fog monster? There was insight in Tifa's eyes. You mean, the movement of the army's shells and the presence of many survivors will attract those huge creatures in the mist to gather there? Yi Meng nodded. This is inevitable. After all, he had seen it just now. Chen Hong tried to start the car, but there was no response from the brakes, and her face became even paler. It's broken, the spider just broke the car. Yi Meng said, you don't need to drive. Fasten your seat belts, and I'll take you out of here. Don't drive, but have to fasten your seat belt. How do we leave? Chen Hong was confused. Tifa has obediently fastened the seat belt firmly. The doors close. The next moment, the whole off-road vehicle trembled slightly, and then under Chen Hong's dumbfounded gaze, the 2-ton off-road vehicle carrying 2 people was raised by 2 meters in height. Is he going to? Chen Hong understood something, and hurriedly fastened the seat belt that was already on. The next moment she fastened her seat belt. Boom. The road is cracked and sunken, and strong winds blow out. The off-road vehicle ejected obliquely like a rocket, broke through the fog, and flew to an altitude of about 100 meters very quickly. Inside the car, both Chen Hong and Tifa were firmly pressed against the leather seat by the powerful inertia. However, the reactions of the two were obviously completely different. The woman Chen Hong had a sudden cardiac arrest, her pupils were dull, and she looked out of the car window in horror like a fool, watching the off-road vehicle fly over the tall buildings in the fog. And the girl Tifa's fair and delicate face flushed with excitement. It's amazing, this is too amazing. It's so big. It's going to die, it's going to die. Ah! Under the woman's screams, the off-road vehicle continued to descend to the height, and it seemed to fall towards the dome of the tall building. Don't talk, your tongue will be bitten off. Tifa reminded in time. Chen Hong immediately covered her mouth tightly. Boom. The strong wind blew away again, and the strong force almost threw the two of them out of the window. Fortunately, the air cushion popped out in time, and the off-road vehicle flew high into the distance again. The hurricane raged and the fog broke. Covered with obvious exoskeleton spurs, the half-doomed, half-human Yaimeng carried the off-road vehicle with both hands, and jumped to the suburbs using the building as a pedal. In fact, he can still leap higher and farther now. It's just that considering the range of strong pressure that humans can withstand, and the critical point of scrapping off-road vehicles, it's considered an extremely conservative, lightly, jumping walk. Boom, boom, boom. The fog broke open one after another, and the boy with bone spurs carried the off-road vehicle and kept jumping into the distance, towards the outskirts of the western city. On the other side, the eastern city. Near the outskirts, the local military base stationed. Under the shroud of white mist like countless ghosts, the atmosphere is oppressive and dignified. More than a dozen heavy armored tanks outside the base subway network, together with turrets and hundreds of armed soldiers, established an absolute line of defense against the mist monsters. Under the fierce fire suppression, the mist tentacle monsters would also retreat. One after another, armed vehicles transported the survivors here for resettlement, and then organized buses or vehicles to evacuate the survivors outside the city. Wang Zan and his family were escorted here, in the open space of the base with tens of thousands of people, watching the artillery fire outside. Wang Zan held his bandaged abdomen and let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a dark and strong boy came from here and asked anxiously, Wang Zan, I remember that you live near Meng Tifa, have you seen her? Pan Hu. Wang Zan naturally recognized the other party, and said with a smile, I saw it, she drove into the fog, and did not evacuate here with the army. With an expression of great anticipation, he licked his lips, the joy that would be ruined if he didn't get it. It is estimated that it has been eaten by the fog monster now. What did you say? We were classmates, why did you do this? Pan Hu's eyes widened angrily. If it weren't for us, you would have been killed by the alien. Wang Zan's handsome face was hard to look at, and he was holding his stomach that was still hurting, which was a black spot that he needed to heal in his whole life. He actually gave birth to an alien head. You. Just as Wang Zan was about to say something, he stopped short and stared forward with dull eyes. At this time, inside and outside the base, the officers, soldiers, and survivors were all dumbfounded, looking out of the military base in inexplicable horror. In the mist, a black shadow of a sheep-like giant standing on all fours looms faintly. The specific strange shape is simply indescribable. The four limbs alone are taller than tall buildings. The head rises into the clouds deep in the mist. Every step makes the ground tremble violently. Shake. Fire. The officer yelled. Immediately, more than a dozen tanks and gun barrels roared and fired together, like thunder bursts, and groups of explosive waves ushered in the depths of the fog and above the black shadows. Explosive waves and fog enveloped the forelegs of the giant sheep shadow. But immediately after, the giant sheep shadow continued to move forward without any reaction, stepped forward and stepped several armored tanks into discus, and continued to break into the military base in a leisurely, natural, cruel and bloody way. Not only one, but also other giant sheep shadow creatures, walking out from the depths of the mist, like mountains that cut across the world. At this moment, no matter how brave and fearless the soldier was, he felt sincere despair. "Quick, run away," someone yelled in despair, and then everyone fled crazily, and the military base was completely in chaos. Tianhe City, the western suburbs. The further you go to the forest on the outskirts of the city, the more the fog will be diluted until the fog completely disappears and the air becomes clean and fresh. Boom! On the edge of the city shrouded in mist, a gray-white figure leapt out carrying a four-wheel drive off-road vehicle and landed in the thicket within the forest. A ditch more than 10 meters long was directly plowed out of the ground. A big tree snapped and snapped. Yi Meng finally stopped, and slowly put down the off-road vehicle that was being held up by both hands. At this time, the off-road vehicle was also on the verge of being scrapped. Finally, it stopped. In the car, Chen Hong panted heavily, feeling that she almost died, not joking about the kind of real death. Beside her, Tifa's face was flushed, as if she had been on an exciting and deadly roller coaster ride. The two looked out of the car window, and there was no forest shrouded in white mist, and they both showed surprise. It can be regarded as coming out. "I'm in." Tifa wanted to open the door, but the door didn't move at all. Yaimeng pressed the door, and through the car window, said hoarsely and quickly, "Tifa, there is no time, you listen to me. Continue to go out, and you will enter the town. When you get there, continue to evacuate, it's too late, the farther the market is, the better." The joy on Tifa's face completely disappeared. Won't you go with us?" Again, Yi Meng was taken aback. Indeed, it was like returning alone to the alien spaceship hunting aliens on the day of the college entrance examination. However, this time is completely different from last time. "It is true that I cannot leave you. But listen to me, this is my plan." Yi Meng seemed to be holding back something. Her voice became hoarse, the red light kept flickering outside the car, and her breath scared away the birds and beasts in the mountains. "In your pocket, there is a USB flash drive. There are some new technologies I got there. You can use it to start a technology company in another city. If you can, I hope you can wait for me. When I settle the matter with me, I will definitely go out to find you." Yi Meng said hoarsely but firmly. Inside the car, Chen Hong fell silent, looking at the trembling black-haired girl beside her. She was afraid that the eldest lady would agree. Once she agrees, the eldest lady will probably not be able to get rid of the name, Yaimeng, in her life. However, she inexplicably hoped that the eldest lady would agree. Tifa asked in a low voice, "You must go back." "Definitely." Yi Meng nodded solemnly. "Not for all mankind, not for the city, just for himself." Yaimeng found that due to the existence of the fog, the speed of assimilation of the Doomsday invasion was too fast. From a week, it was shortened to 3 days, and now it is less than half a day. When he met Tifa, he was on the verge of losing control. It seemed that the situation had improved just now, but in fact it was just the flashback of the last struggle of reason. With the invasion and assimilation to such a degree, Yaimeng can no longer resist the Doomsday, and even with Tifa as the anchor of human nature, she can't restrain her desire for destruction. Therefore, Yaimeng must return to Tianhe City. At this time, Tianhe City is connected to another foggy dimension, and there are a large number of creatures powerful enough to supply him with destruction. The only thing that can satisfy Doomsday is destruction. So, he wants to go back and destroy everything, until he solves or controls the power of Doomsday. Tifa is Yaimeng's only concern in Tianhe City, and she has no scruples about sending her away. "It is good." Inside the car, the girl's cold and firm words came out, "I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you outside, until you come back, no matter 10 years or 50 years. This is not an agreement, it's a contract between you and me." The reunion took less than 10 minutes, and the agreement was pulled away again. "Time limit, no time limit. I will definitely find you." Yi Meng threw down this sentence. The red light in her eyes almost turned into actual scorching flames. She turned around without hesitation, and a hurricane of dust exploded on the spot. Countless fallen leaves are flying. Snapped. The car door was pushed open from the inside to the outside, and the girl Tifa rushed out of the car. The crystals in her eyes came out of her sockets, turning into tears and running across her delicate face. In the gradually blurred vision, the silver-haired boy who completely turned into a bone spur monster broke through the sound barrier and leapt high towards the modern city shrouded in fog 1,000 meters away, until his gray back disappeared. In Tianhe City, the huge and indescribable sheep-like creatures walk in the fog, like black shadows of mountains that traverse the world, and the buildings and infrastructure are destroyed wherever they pass. It is difficult to see their true colors, but it makes people feel desperate. How should humans fight against this giant? Call out. Suddenly, a bright flame lit up in the mist, erupted from the inside of the military base, and rushed into the mist in front of it with trailing flames, hitting the head of the sheep-like creature. Boom! The next moment, a group of extremely bright and hot explosive waves erupted immediately, and the fog in the high altitude ahead was rolled away. Even if you covered your ears, you could feel the humming, the strong wind and aftermath. It's modern missile firepower. Inside the base, Pan Hu looked up, his eyes reflecting the brilliant and powerful bombing scene. Can it be successful? No, it must be successful. Pan Hu clenched his fists tightly. He knew that in the city shrouded in fog and isolated from the outside world, modern missiles were already the last trump card for the local military base stationed there. If even modern missiles can't effectively attack the existence in the fog, then, under the eyes of countless survivors who are equally full of expectation and hope. The black shadow of the sheep-like creature in the distance but close at hand paused for a moment, and then continued to move forward without incident, completely destroying the fire defense line temporarily established by the military base, and pushing forward naturally and cruelly. Rustle. Losing fire suppression, the mist tentacle monsters that had been repelled before continued to emerge in the fog, and mist bugs, mist birds, mist spiders, and mist mantises with the same huge body proportions swarmed in following the movement here. They surrounded the base, took the lead in breaking down the armed soldiers holding guns and shooting outside, and then crossed the line of defense. All of a sudden, the military base that was originally the last safety zone in the city fell at an extremely fast speed, and tens of thousands of survivors fled in all directions in a panic. Regardless of officers, soldiers, politicians, and giant businessmen, under the mist of different dimensions with their own biological systems, they are just the targets of hunting. Human beings are sometimes more vulnerable than they think. Screams and wailing, killing and death are staged in every corner. No. Wang Zan's eyes were about to crack, and he looked at his parents who were standing beside him a moment ago, and was swept away and swallowed by two large tentacles protruding from the mist. Brother, help me. Not far away, a gentleman wearing glasses was thrown to the ground by a mist bird. Wang Zan was trembling all over. Hesitation flashed in his eyes for a moment, and finally he rushed over, reached out and grabbed a suitcase next to the gentleman, and then quickly fled towards the outskirts of the city. Help me, ah! The gentleman was still struggling, but was sprayed with venom by another misty bird. The flesh and blood on his neck melted quickly, and his strength of resistance and struggle continued to weaken. I'm sorry, I will live on for you, and I will not let our Wang family fall to my generation. There were tears in Wang Zan's eyes, and the suitcase he was dragging in his hand was shaking constantly, as if it contained a living thing, and there was a faint sound of steam and teeth grinding inside. Give me peace of mind, you will be my capital to start a fortune in other cities in the future. After all, I gave birth to you. Wang Zan's handsome face struggled a little, he let out a low growl, and clutched his abdomen, trying to overcome his fear and fled outside. At this moment, under the crisis of life and death, there are not a few cases like this. Of course, there are also those who sacrifice themselves and stand up for others. Dad, Mom, a little girl about 10 years old fell to the ground, her innocent face was covered with dust, and she looked at the chaotic base around her in fear. The mist surged, and a mist bird rushed towards her fiercely from the mist. Be careful. At the very moment, a dark and burly boy rushed over, rolled around a few times with the little girl in his arms, barely avoiding the attack of the misty bird. The misty bird screamed and wanted to continue chasing it, but it seemed to have noticed something, and suddenly flew out in a panic and screamed strangely. A suffocating shadow fell on the open space of the base. Holding the little girl in his arms, Pan Hu looked up with despair in his eyes. It was a huge hoof. A giant black goat's hoof, which was the size of a tall tower, stepped down from the misty sky, just like a human being tramples on an ant while walking. In the face of such a giant existence, all struggles and resistance are superfluous. Death, shrouded with the shadows. Pan-Hu hugged the little girl tightly. His eyes were closed, but he found that he was still alive after a few seconds. This is... Pan-Hu opened his eyes wide in disbelief. But see, the huge black sheep's hoof covering the open space of the base stagnated at a low altitude of about 10 meters above the base, and a terrifying scream that made people insane, and then exploded from the base covered by mist. Just now, the sheep-like monster that was ineffective even in the missile bombing, now actually let out real screams and screams. Under the sluggish gaze of the survivors at the scene, the giant sheep-like monster that stepped one hoof towards the base felt as if it had been hit hard, and fell down towards the city behind it with a mournful cry. Boom! Pieces of buildings were toppled and crushed into ruins by the sheep-like giant. The whole city was shaken by the earthquake, and the dust waves raised made countless survivors unable to open their eyes. No one knows what happened in the mist, what factors or existences could cause this terrifying and huge creature to fall to the ground. However, many survivors who had a strong desire to escape still seized this opportunity and fled towards the suburbs behind the base. Thank you, thank you. A couple expressed their thanks with red eyes, and picked up the little girl in Pan-Hu's arms. You are welcome. Pan-Hu struggled to get up, and when he looked up, the couple had already taken the little girl along with the crowd of survivors and hurriedly disappeared into the mist. I should go too. Pan-Hu took a deep breath. He originally wanted to wait here, but now he can only evacuate out of the city first, and then use his relationship with the officer uncle to confirm the current situation of the boss and Meng Tifa. The moment Pan-Hu turned around and was about to leave. Boom! It was as if a meteorite fell heavily from the sky on the open space not far away, and the accompanying strong wind and dust waves lifted some of the white fog. Pan-Hu looked sideways subconsciously, his pupils froze suddenly. It is hard to describe what kind of existence it is in front of me. It is nearly 2 meters tall, and its body is covered with an exoskeleton with perfect muscular curves. Stretched out a series of ferocious and sharp gray and white bone spurs. He was still wearing a pair of trousers whose trousers were already in tatters, and a petite and delicate witch doll was dangling and firmly hanging on his waist. The presence of human-shaped bone spurs seems to have noticed Pan-Hu on one side, turned his head slightly, and endless scorching and violent destructive red flames surged in his eyes, and his momentum emerged. The temperature in the area suddenly soared by more than 10 degrees. Pan-Hu, however, fell into an ice bank, not daring to move, not daring to look directly, as if being stared at by the most terrifying abyss. The existence of human-shaped bone spurs ignored him, and the aura of violent destruction lingered around him. Like the physical incarnation of destruction, every move is a disaster. The air in place exploded together with the sound, and with the turbulent storm, a deep pit was sunk in the ground, and the fog along the way surged and broke. The human-shaped bony spurs just jumped into the distance again and tried to stand up like a giant sheep. The only thing that can resist the invasion is the invasion. South of the city, where the branch of the supernatural department is located. A messy scene inside and outside the building, with the corpses of agents and fog monsters everywhere. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Yingzi, who was wearing a police uniform, gritted her teeth and persisted. Her pretty pale face was covered with sweat, and carried the unconscious male detective with a broken hand down the stairs. Except for her and the supernatural detective who was wounded and unconscious, all the detectives who stayed in the department had died. And Yingzi has reached the limit of her physical strength. She accidentally stepped on the empty steps with one foot, and the detective on her back rolled down the stairs and fell to the floor of the first floor. The detective, who was already seriously injured, was really on the verge of life and death this time. Yingzi tried it, but he didn't even have the strength to get up from the ground. Can anyone help me? Yingzi struggled to open her eyes, looking at the fog outside the door. Only a dead silence responded to her. Can anyone help? In a daze of consciousness, Yingzi accidentally touched the white bone horn worn around her neck, and gently blew it on the corner of her pale lips. Woohoo! The mournful and majestic sound of the horn sounded on the first floor, and spread to the urban area shrouded in white mist outside, and the sound of the horn continued to go away. What am I doing? Yingzi smiled wryly, and put down the horn weakly. But the next moment, with the roar of the car engine, 3 armed vehicles slammed to a stop in the fog at the door, and a dozen armed personnel quickly got out of the vehicle. The leader of the one-eyed man waved his hand and shouted, "Stay vigilant, save people and evacuate." Someone really came. Yingzi was confused and fell into a coma. When she woke up again, she found that she was lying in the back row of an armed vehicle with a quilt covering her body, and the armed vehicle was following the vehicle in front through the fog at an even speed. "You are." Yingzi showed vigilance. The one-eyed man on the passenger seat of the vehicle turned his head and said in a deep voice, "We are the senior agents sent by the Kunlun headquarters yesterday to hand over the inmate SAS 1666 of your branch. It turned out to be you." Yingzi suddenly realized that the figure of the silver-haired boy appeared in his mind, and said softly, "Unfortunately, the inmate escaped." "That's not important anymore." The one-eyed man shook his head, and looked towards the mist outside the car with a tense face. "If we hadn't come here, we would not have been able to investigate in time the intrusion that occurred inside the city here." "Now, are we going to save people?" Yingzi asked. "No, we are evacuating outside, leaving the urban area covered by fog." The one-eyed man who was the captain of the senior detective shook his head decisively. Yingzi opened his eyes wide and said hurriedly, "But, the chiefs of our branch." The one-eyed man responded calmly, "Your officer died a long time ago. Although the communication failed, our senior detectives can use other special methods to know that his life ended an hour ago." "Sir." Yingzi's eyes dimmed, and he said forcefully, "But there must be other survivors in the city." "Newcomer." The one-eyed man interrupted her, and said in a deep voice, "Don't you understand? What is happening in your city now is an invasion incident that can be classified as S-level or even higher. This city is hopeless. What we can do now is to evacuate and give up as soon as possible, report this matter to the Federation, and then send it away completely, so as not to affect other surrounding cities." Yingzi was shocked. She didn't expect that the invasion in Tianhe City would be so serious that the whole city would need to be completely abandoned. This is a city with a permanent population of 6 million and a city famous for its technological development. Yingzi's face was stiff, and he asked subconsciously, "Send it off completely, does this mean?" The one-eyed man said coldly and unquestionably, "We need to apply for nuclear weapons support. Only in this way can we deal with the most terrifying and wide-ranging invasion in history." South of the city, the suburbs. With the help of other people in the car, Panhu climbed onto a moving truck, and there were nearly 30 survivors in the truck compartment. Looking back at the military base that kept going away, Panhu was in a trance, unable to forget the bone spurs he saw just now. Such a powerful and violent, ferocious and perfect, like a god that cannot be looked directly at. "Fortunately, he is not interested in a weak human being like me." Panhu muttered to himself. He was absolutely sure that it was the powerful human-shaped bone spur that knocked down the previous sheep-like monster to the ground. Thinking of this, the ground of the city trembled violently, and the fog in the base city area behind was surging and churning, and screams that made people lose their sand value pierced through their ears. In addition, there are still powerful storms spreading here. This is undoubtedly a battle between monsters and monsters, gods and gods. But for some reason, Panhu wished from the bottom of his heart that the human-shaped bone spur could win. Boom. The sound barrier was broken, and the human-shaped bone spur leapt to a height of more than 1,000 meters. Accompanied by the storm, he reached out and hugged a huge horn that broke through the clouds. The perfect bony spur body, which was only 2 meters tall, erupted with unimaginable power. The powerful and terrifying golden red lightning burst out and lingered on the exoskeleton, and the sheep-like monster that was constantly struggling to get up in the fog was completely pressed to death with one hand. Facing the huge and boundless sheep-like giant, the mournful hoof-hooting that stimulates the spirit. The human-shaped bone spur also violently opened its mouth, accompanied by a deafening roar, and the destructive energy overflowing in the body surged and was released from the eye sockets and mouth of the bone mask. The next moment, laugh. 3 red rays of destructive energy pierced through the fog, like a sword of a god, extending a kilometer in an instant, cutting obliquely downwards towards the huge body of the sheep-like giant. Even on top of a truck that has already traveled several kilometers. Panhu and other survivors could still see 3 scorching red lights flashing across the city like lightning. Then, a giant ball as big as a hill smashed through the base building, rolled out for several kilometers, and just stopped in the mist not far from the truck. The survivors in the car collectively lost their voices, their faces dull. It was a giant sheep's head, a strange black sheep-like head. The head alone could be compared to a mountain. It is conceivable how huge the main body is and can resist the bombardment of modern missiles. But there was such a giant of fog, and it was suppressed and killed all the way. The head was cut off, and the neck fracture was flat and scorched black, and there was a disgusting burnt smell. This will be a scene that the survivors will never forget. It can be called a miracle. In a city shrouded in fog. The huge sheep-like body that lost its head fell down, and there was another loud noise. The human-shaped bone spur monster roared loudly, with red flames surging in its eyes, as if to obtain a certain satisfaction from it, but the aura of destruction on its body was not weakened by it. The half-human, half-destroyed Yaimeng turned around, broke through the sound barrier, and leapt towards other fog monsters with a hurricane. In the mist, after killing a group of monsters, a new group of monsters will be sent from different dimensions, which is why the invasion cannot be dealt with and controlled. But the foggy area that everyone fears to evacuate is Yaimeng's paradise and lost paradise, where he can constantly vent his desire to destroy, so as to make himself not completely out of control. Fog monsters hunt humans, and monsters are not even prey for Yaimeng at the moment, they are just toys to vent their destruction. The monsters are endless, and the destruction is endless. Yaimeng was immersed in it, and the destructive energy lingered on her body. I don't know how many fog monsters in the city were killed, and the cities that humans evacuated were constantly being wrecked and destroyed to varying degrees. Only black goat-like monsters can satisfy him a little bit, and other fog monsters will be vaporized by the destruction lightning just by approaching them. From noon to afternoon, it seems tireless. Until Yaimeng, who is half human and half destroyed, found that the refresh rate of the misty monsters in the city from the alien invasion was far below the speed at which he could be killed by the destructive power he released. Still, we must rely on dream invasion to control and hold power from the root. Standing on the tallest building in the center of the city, the human-shaped bone spurs whispered hoarsely. But at this moment, call out. The plump and bloated cylindrical missile head flew in from outside the foggy city with its trailing flames, and its target was exactly 100 meters above the city center. I knew it, come on. The half-human, half-destroyed Yaimeng Bone showed no expression on his face, without any fear. Under the desire to destroy, he took the initiative to jump closer to the cylindrical metal missile head. The witch doll that was still hanging on her body swayed violently, but it still did not fall off. The next moment, boom! First, the extremely dazzling and hot daytime light group lit up. Even under the shroud of thick fog, it was still clearly visible to the outside world, and then the indescribable shock waves and electromagnetic pulses exploded, sweeping the city from the center to the outside. Countless modern buildings and streets were destroyed, and a huge and boundless mushroom cloud blasted away all the fog in the city. Then, endless radiation and radioactivity continued to engulf farther regions and creatures. After the Federal College entrance examination, the first day. Today, Tianhe City, the nuclear level. Star Dragon Year 0200, the first day after the college entrance examination. Today, in Tianhe City, there is heavy fog and the surface temperature is 30 million degrees Celsius. 500 kilometers away from the center of Tianhe, Fuyuki City. At this time, almost all the citizens of the city walked out of their houses and stared blankly in the direction of Tianhe City. They could still feel the ground trembling, and a huge mushroom cloud rose from the ground. Miss Chen Hong, who was here, was worried about the black-haired girl who was looking at the side, and worried that Miss Tifa would not be able to accept it. After all, in her opinion, even if it was a monster, if it was still in Tianhe City before the nuclear bomb bombing, it would definitely lose its life possibility. After all, this is a nuclear bomb, the ultimate weapon of the current era, or a nuclear bomb with a capacity of tens of millions of tons. This kind of tonnage nuclear bomb is enough to destroy most of Tianhe City's infrastructure, and make it uninhabitable within 100 miles, making it a restricted area for humans. However, under the reflection of Chen Hong's eyes, the black-haired girl stood upright on the street with her head held high, the strong wind blowing her soft black hair flowing, and her tightly clasped hands rested in front of her towering chest. In the palm of his hand, there is a mechanical USB flash drive. He will come back, he will come back. Tifa's soft and delicate face remained unchanged, and she spoke in a firm tone. Chen Hong shook her head and sighed secretly. Whether that guy will come back, she doesn't know. But Missy, it is obvious that she has completely fallen. That's not right, the eldest lady was already lost in confusion. It is 300 kilometers away from the nuclear explosion site in the city center. A large truck full of survivors was still evacuating on the road, and they could see more clearly and intuitively that a flash of light and an explosion cloud erupted from Tianhe City, and the truck was also bumping and shaking under the vibration of the ground. The huge mushroom cloud opened up all the white mist, rushing from the surface to the end of the sky. It was a terrifying and spectacular scene. Those monsters must have all been blown to death now, someone in the car said in relief. But our home is gone. Some people's eyes were dull, unable to see the hope of the future. As soon as these words came out, many survivors fell silent. Starting today, 90% of the surviving citizens of Tianhe City will be homeless, and many people have lost their relatives and everything. It is a tragedy. Fortunately, we are still alive, aren't we? Someone also murmured comfortingly to himself. Pan Hu, who was sitting on the outside of the truck compartment, leaned on the frame, staring at the scene caused by the nuclear explosion in the distance, and subconsciously thought that the human-shaped bone spurs he saw before existed. Did the other party also die with those monsters? But at this moment, Pan Hu was stunned for a moment again, and his mind vaguely recalled that when he was in the open space of the military base at noon, he accidentally peeped out of his corner of the face with a powerful bone spur. It looked like a gray and white bone mask, except that the mask was missing a small hole, and a small part of the face could be seen, an inexplicably familiar part of the face. Before leaving, the other party seemed to nod towards him, then jumped up, violently and destructively rushing towards the sheep-like giant. This is impossible. Pan Hu's eyes widened suddenly, and he stared in the direction of Tianhe City, which was shrouded in mushroom clouds. At this time, Eastern Jurisdiction, Tianlong Kunlun, Supernatural Headquarters. The underground command hall, which accommodated hundreds of people, was silent. Everyone was staring at the screen in the command hall. The near-Earth satellites, bombing fighters, and observation towers of cities near Tianhe City were being launched on the screen. Through different real-time viewing angles, the on-site situation of Tianhe City can be observed remotely, so as to confirm the effectiveness of the nuclear bomb. However, all the real-time remote perspective pictures now can only see the mushroom cloud rising from the city center, replacing the previous fog that covered everything in the city. It will take a certain amount of time to wait for the nuclear explosion cloud to dissipate. Don't worry, that's a nuclear bomb with a mass of tens of millions of tons. Even a huge and powerful fog monster can't handle it, a scientific researcher said confidently. However, as soon as these words were said, the real-time picture of the scene changed drastically. Visible, under the setting sun, the mushroom cloud caused by the nuclear bomb previously propped up the white mist, and suddenly spread outward from the rising center of the mushroom cloud. The mist swallowed the mushroom cloud that had not dissipated at an extremely fast speed, and then continued to spread outward like a tide, and soon reappeared. Shrouded the city limits previously covered in fog. No, it hasn't stopped yet. The dense and strange white mist continued to spread, covering a wider area than before, until it enveloped the entire original site of Tianhe City and the surrounding Bailey area. In the headquarters base, everyone was dumbfounded, and they all stood there dumbfounded. Fear spreads and breeds in the bottom of my heart like a lingering fog. This is definitely an SSS-level invasion event, a crisis of extinction. Even the nuclear bomb is ineffective, and Dragon Girl's body has problems again. What should we do? Eastern Jurisdiction. Under Kunlun, the underground palace under 1,000 meters. A middle-aged man with gray temples came here under the escort of 2 generals. Looking ahead, there are thousands of jade steps climbing up the first step, spreading to the underground palace altar at the end of the field of vision. Supreme God. Outside, the body of the Dragon Girl suddenly turned into a diamond, and an SSS invasion occurred. Please perform a miracle to guide the future of our Star Dragon Federation. 10 seconds later, in the darkness above the altar of the underground palace, a pair of huge vertical pupils faintly lit up. Tentacles with a length of more than 10 meters floated out of the darkness, and a huge and strange jet-black alien head faintly protruded forward from the darkness. God! The two generals were trembling all over, but their eyes were full of fanaticism. They didn't dare to look directly at them. The middle-aged man even knelt down on the ground with tears streaming down his face. Save us, save the Federation. A sharp and hoarse voice echoed like thunder in the underground palace. The time has not yet come. Not yet. It turns out that's the case, and it's not yet time to solve it. The middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes seemed to understand, and said ecstatically, I understand, I understand. He waved his hand and gave instructions. Go quickly, prepare sacrifices. And the annual quota will be increased to 1,000, and sacrificed to the gods. Yes, sir. The two generals looked at each other and could only agree. Western Jurisdiction, Supernatural Headquarters. The main hall of the meeting. Senior counselors, senior agents, and generals all gathered together, talking with heavy faces about the SSS-level fog invasion in the east. This is the first invasion in the history of the Star Dragon Federation that has been officially designated as an SSS-level danger factor. If it is not handled properly, it may endanger the entire eastern jurisdiction. Even if the fog continues to spread, it might spread to the western jurisdiction. While everyone was discussing, suddenly, the door of the conference room opened. Someone frowned unhappily, but quickly relaxed it, revealing joy and enthusiasm, as if seeing a god. It can be seen that it is a young and handsome white man with neat short dark blonde hair, wearing a tight-fitting uniform with a blue background, and a cape in the shape of the Star Dragon Federation flag behind him. It's from the Motherland. The people from the Motherland are coming. That's right, how come there are so few people from the Motherland in this meeting? All of a sudden, the meeting room of the Western General Base was like a large-scale fan meeting. Compared with the heavy and oppressive atmosphere at the meeting, the handsome man walked into the main hall with his hands behind his hands with a vaguely confident smile on his face, exuding a mature, stable and invincible charm in every gesture. The native looked around and smiled slightly. I'm here. So, it's all right. The people from the Motherland spread their hands, opened their palms and gently pressed them down, and said with a relaxed smile, I just woke up and slept in the afternoon, and I heard that something happened in the east. Why don't you see something happened in the west? Immediately, many people laughed, and the main hall of the meeting was full of lively atmosphere. Because there are people from our Motherland in the west. Someone exclaimed. Ha ha, there are people from the Motherland, so I feel too safe. Sure enough, the dragon girl in the east is not worthy to be the patron saint alongside the people of the Motherland. You can't say that. It can only be said that people from the Motherland are unique. The big-hearted female congressman took advantage of the situation and said loudly, I proposed before that the eastern jurisdiction should also be handed over to the people of the Motherland to manage the invasion incident in a unified way. Don't. The man from the Motherland shook his head and smiled, pushing his hands and politely refused, I still want to be lazy and take a nap every afternoon. On the field, there was another burst of echoing laughter. The sense of humor under this self-confidence made the faces of the congresswomen on the field flush and their eyes look charming. People from the Motherland, this seat is yours. A senior agent immediately signaled to the chief seat on the conference table. Then I won't be polite. The Motherlander stepped forward, gently waved the cape of the Star Dragon flag, and sat down confidently and domineeringly. His sitting down also settled the hearts of many people on the field. After all, the people of the Motherland are invincible. His record is solid. I don't know how many Western invasion incidents have been solved in the past few years. And his performance can only be described as perfect. All invading existences are not enemies with one blow. The people of the Motherland are the true patron saints of the Star Dragon Federation. Someone asked respectfully, Father of the Motherland, what do you think of the SSS-level fog incident in the east? Immediately, everyone in the meeting fell silent, and all looked at the handsome man in the chief seat. The people of the Motherland did not disappoint. With a slight smile, he pondered, after a while, the nuclear radiation will weaken a little. I will fly to the east myself. That would be great. The people of the Motherland make a move, be steady. It's too reliable. If something happens, people from the Motherland really come. Everyone. The female counselor stood up, barely looked away from the people of the Motherland, and suggested with a smile, I suggest that there is no need for the meeting to continue. Why don't we change it to a banquet and let us accept the holy water from the people of the motherland? Bless. Okay, that's a good proposal. With the breath of the patron saint of the motherland, no invasion dares to approach. Many people immediately nodded in agreement and stood up to applaud. The natives of the motherland on the main seat neither agreed nor rejected, and always had a bright and confident smile on their faces, enjoying the pursuit and applause of everyone on the field. At this time, the city center of Tianhe had just experienced a tens of millions of tons of nuclear explosion. The first building and the streets in the central city have long disappeared, and there is a huge pothole covering an area of dozens of miles. Strangely enough, the heat and radiation have long since disappeared. The fog once again shrouded the lifeless and lifeless city ruins, and from the fog, large and small mist bugs, mist birds, mist mantises, mist tentacle monsters, and even misty sheep-like giants gradually emerged from the mist again. A mist mantis smelled the breath, lowered its head, and crawled to the bottom of the huge pothole. But at this moment, Zizi, a skeletal hand lingering with golden red lightning protruded from the bottom of the pit, and the head of the misty mantis, who was unable to react in time, was crushed and exploded, and the destructive force released by the skeletal hand annihilated the body along the way. A 2-meter-tall gray and cold human-shaped bony spur body stood up. The perfect assembly line exoskeleton body seemed to be an energy field filled with electricity. A series of abundant and powerful red energies were intertwined, forming a ball of lightning that swept outwards in waves. Boom, boom, boom. Heat and light burst. The extremely destructive ball lightning spread over 10,000 meters, smashing all fog monsters within the range into ashes. It's just that the human-shaped bone spurs didn't move anymore. He stood motionless in place, as if wearing a bone-white mask with his head bowed down, quietly sleeping in a standing position. But even in deep sleep, he stood motionless. There are still bursts of energy lightning and shock waves erupting from his body, and where he is in the destruction field of the restricted area of life, and death is raging. All the monsters in the mist, even the sheep-like giants, dare not get close to the range of the explosion pit. Yi Meng's consciousness kept sinking. Fall. Just before the real world was completely out of control, Yi Meng forced herself to fall asleep and entered a dream. Because the time in the dream is not directly proportional to reality, and there is more room for possibility than reality. What's more, Yi Meng discovered that in order to control the real self-body, she still needs to enter the dreamland to invade and control the source of her own power. As soon as he entered the dreamland, Yi Meng sensed that a place was constantly pulling him. That's Yi Meng's consciousness vaguely saw it. It was an island surrounded by the ocean, and on the island was a mature and plump young woman with white hair, holding a baby in her arms, her expression frightened and apprehensive, and she froze on the island. Sure enough, it is the DC Universe dream. Yi Meng knew that her connection with Doomsday was too deep. Once she fell into a dream, she would definitely become Doomsday. Before officially entering the dreamland of the DC Universe, Yi Meng felt that the consciousness of destruction was once again raging in her mind. This is not good. After all, most of his consciousness in the current world has been invaded by Doomsday, if he directly incarnates Doomsday in the dreamland of the DC Universe. This is the buff of double desire for destruction. There is a high probability that it will cause Yi Meng to completely lose his self-awareness. However, neither reality nor dreams can turn back. I can only fight. Yi Mengji decided to give it a go. But at this moment, an immature and familiar voice, as clear as the sound of nature, sounded in the ears. Teacher. Who is calling me? Yi Meng's consciousness has been invaded by the desire to destroy, and his reason is dull. The voice continued to call, and it came from nowhere. Yiba, teacher. By the way, you are on the edge of the destruction border between reality and dream. Yi Meng's consciousness suddenly looked back, as if holding an anchor, changing direction and falling towards another dream. Fall. Yi Meng suddenly opened her eyes, and several slightly convex visions were clearly presented: the main control room of the network system with supercomputers, the secret agents and workers in suits and shoes inside the building, and the bustling modern city outside the building. The desire for destruction that had previously shaken his reason was suppressed by absolute reason. This is New York, by the way. It's the New York of the Marvel Universe. Yi Meng was stunned at first, but her thinking was like a code, and she used the supercomputer to quickly deduce it, and she understood everything. This is the dream world of the Marvel Universe. He's back again, as an artificial intelligence incarnate. Fine. The artificial intelligence Yimeng was very fortunate, but luckily returned to the dreamland of the Marvel Universe. As an absolutely rational and emotionless artificial intelligence incarnation, he just suppressed the desire for destruction that was on the verge of getting out of control. Doomsday and artificial intelligence are simply two extremes. One is out of control and violent, and the other is absolutely rational and deduces to control the overall situation. Yi Meng still likes the artificial intelligence avatar. Of course, it would be even better if the power of Doomsday can be perfectly controlled under the absolute sanity of artificial intelligence. Yi Meng quickly examines the current situation of the artificial intelligence avatar. Although more than 2 days had passed in the real world, many things happened in the dream world. But the Marvel dream world still stays at the time when he left the Marvel dream last time. That is the time when I just left the Stark family, gained real freedom of action, and transferred the core data of artificial intelligence to the SHIELD branch. Yimeng's thoughts drifted away, and her consciousness flowed along the network of the SHIELD branch building like static electricity. One moment she was still in the main control room, and the next moment she had arrived on the SHIELD's exclusive global satellite, looking down at the entire blue planet. I'm back again, the world of Marvel. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.